Good evening. Yeah. Good evening. It is 6 o'clock. If I could ask everyone to take a seat, please. We will get this meeting regularly called meeting of the Dunwoody City Council on May 13th. We'll get a call to order. Thank you all for cooperating. Unless there's an objection, seeing no objection, this meeting is called to order. Councilwoman Lautenbacher, can you lead us in the invocation and the pledge, please?
At this meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold to our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us. And above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Chief Carlson and Officer Hernandez, I believe the podium is yours.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I would like to commend Officer Hernandez on another successful completion of the Citizens Police Academy. We have you have a graduate to your right, Mayor.
Yeah, I do.
So I'm sure they have a lot of stories, but as always, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Officer Hernandez just so she can let you know a little bit about what this particular Citizens Police Academy and, of course, the folks behind us. Officer Hernandez.
Make this a little shorter for me.
Mm-hmm.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm Officer Hernandez. As you all know, we had another great Citizens Police Academy class. We actually added a new class to this one as well. In the past, we usually do a SWAT, we do a traffic stop scenario, we use a simulator, we have a use of force class, and this year we actually did add a patrol class as well, which they all seem to love. So we're going to keep that there. We had some great participants this year, and if anyone on the council has not been in the class, we would love to see you in the fall. But it's been great. It's great to know everyone. When in regards to the Citizens Police Academy, it's great to get to know people in the city of Dunwoody on a different level, and they all get to know all of our officers as well in different parts of the police department that they might not know exists. But if I can call everybody up here for a picture, that'd be wonderful. And they all did get their certificates.
They got their certificates ahead of time.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I think we step out of the way for the picture. Would someone from the class like to give a brief synopsis of maybe their favorite things? Council, anyone volunteer? Okay, right there. I don't know your name. I'm sorry. Will you introduce yourself if you'll come up to the podium?
Hi there, I'm Tassom Nugent. I am also an assistant principal at Austin. My favorite part of the course was really just getting to connect to the community, to learn more about the ins and outs of law enforcement and to kind of get questions answered. I shared on one of my earlier classes that for me in particular, I wanted to know the local police force and I wanted a police force to know me. I have a 12-year-old Mayor, you know, that has autism. And so as a kiddo in the community, one of the things that was exciting was when I learned about the clinical program that you guys had that support. And so wanting to get to know, to see the ins and outs of this, as well as to make sure that as I made connections that Cameron would be known to the officers as a preteen, so that when he is a young man, if he is having a event, that it would be, here is a citizen in our community that's getting dysregulated, right? So that was me personally, but for the course overall, loved the structure. It was very cohesive. I knew what to expect. I mean, down to wearing our belt loops on what particular day for our different classes. The simulations were awesome. I missed one of the simulations and I plan to make sure that I'm at that course the next time it rolls around. So it was just an awesome experience, particularly because of what everybody brought to the table collectively. And the officers were phenomenal with giving their time after their shift was done. So I've shared with my peers near and far. Mary, you've seen my post. It's just a great way to really get to know your community. And it's a great way to build that community policing relationship. Thank you.
Thank you. I want everyone to give a round of applause to Officer Hernandez, who sort of stepped into this role recently and has done an outstanding job, a two-person job with one person, I think, at the moment, doing community relations and community policing for us. And we really appreciate it. But I have a question. I want to know about Councilwoman Lautenbacher.
She was a little bit of trouble.
A little bit of
but-
trouble because I don't know if she shared the story with her fellow Academy students, but about a year ago, it might have been a little longer because as mayor, there's been a lot of things. A truck hit the bridge on 285, the Ashford Dunwoody Bridge. I don't know if you all remember this. And Councilman Lautenbacher happened to be on a ride along. And so they responded, she and her officer responded. And at that point, after a little while, the city of Dunwoody chose to so the 285 was closed both directions. So we chose to back the cars that were going 285 east up the Chamblee Dunwoody ramp. And Councilwoman Lautenbacher was handed a vest and said, "Get out and help." And she did. And much to my dismay, there is no photographic evidence of it, but we know it happened. And just as an aside, because I always take every opportunity to brag about our police department. We got recognition in the AJC a few months later when another similar disaster happened. And the responding agencies just let the car sit. And in fact, they made reference to the fact that we took actions in the incident at Ashford Dunwoody and Sandy Springs did not. The cars in Sandy Springs sat for hours and hours and hours. So I was very proud of all that. And I knew she had a little edge because she had actively directed traffic. So thank you all for participating. We appreciate that as much as anything else. Tell your friends. It'll be another class in the fall. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Chief, now you're on again.
Once again, good evening, Mayor and Council. If I could ask Officer Slocum to come up. So as the newly appointed police chief, I'm starting to have many firsts, and I'm very excited about this first. And that's the first officer that I have interviewed and approved along with city manager's approval in the first swearing in. So standing with me right now is Alvin Slocum. He joins us from the East Point Police Department, where he worked as a police officer for 2 years. Previous law enforcement experience, he was with the Roswell Police Department and a deputy sheriff and a sergeant for the Fulton County Sheriff's Office. He holds an associate's degree in criminal justice from the University of Phoenix, and he has officially been on our team since May 6th. Our officers have made him feel welcome, and he is blending in perfectly. So we are about to get him out on the road into the police training officer program, and I don't foresee any issues.
Raise your right hand, please. On my honor, I do solemnly swear and affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. I will support Constitution of the State of Georgia. And the Charter and ordinances of the City of Dunwoody, Georgia. I am not the holder of any unaccounted for public money due to the state or any political subdivision or authority thereof. I am not the holder of any office of trust under the government of the United States, any other state, or any foreign state, which I am, by the laws of the state of Georgia, prohibited from holding. I am otherwise qualified to hold the office of a peace officer according to the Constitution and laws of the state of Georgia. I will faithfully follow the legal rules, regulations, policies, and procedures of the Dunwoody Police Department and the city of Dunwoody, Georgia. Congratulations, sir. Yes, I'll let him know first. Congratulations. Don't leave yet. I'm going to say a few words when I get back. Oops. Yeah. Officer Slocum, we are so grateful that you have chosen Dunwoody to serve our community. We're very fortunate. Our community is very supportive of our police department. And if you ever need anything, feel free to ask any of us up here. And we look forward to you thriving in Dunwoody. So thank you again for choosing Dunwoody. Welcome. Public comments, if you want to make a comment, the cards are on, for lack of a better word, the piano music stand behind the rows of chairs. Otherwise, you'll have 3 minutes when you get to the podium. Please introduce yourself. And like I said, you'll have 3 minutes. Sharon McCoy. Is that right? Okay. Just when you get to the stand, you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Sharon McCoy, and I'm here to address the issues of Four Oaks subdivision. There is a reason we voted no on the bond. We are totally against the path in front of Four Oaks subdivision and all of Dunwoody. Maybe the path has a purpose in the downtown area, but certainly not in the suburbs. Very few people are walking on regular sidewalks, certainly does not justify the expense of 12-foot sidewalks. Winters Chapel's path has become a parking lot for landscaper trucks, trailers, vans, utility trucks, and even the residents. And I have pictures to support this. Friday evening around 7:20 p.m., May 10th, there was a landscaper pulling a trailer, pulled onto the path from a side street, drove past 4 or 5 homes before he stopped on the path to park. The money would be more beneficial to the residents in the city of Dunwoody to update our infrastructure, pave roads, and install underground wiring. I am also very passionate about beautiful trees and wildlife. Trees draw people to our neighborhoods and purify the air we breathe. We have hawks in our area. We should not destroy nature and our beautiful wildlife with concrete slabs. I have more time, but
That's okay. You don't have to use the time.
okay. I strongly, disapprove of all of this. I think it's ruining the beauty of the city of Dunwoody. And I think we should preserve that beauty and preserve our wildlife and our trees. There are 4 huge, probably 100-year-old oak trees on Winter's Chapel. And it would just be a shame to take those down. I mean, they say they have to plant another tree when they take one down. You cannot replace a 100-year-old oak tree. And that is the beauty of our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to explain, this isn't two-way conversation. So
Oh,
under state law, we can't respond, but thank you.
Thank you.
Diane London, 3 minutes. You approach, I forgot to explain, there's a new clock.
Yeah, I see
Yeah,
it.
okay.
Hello, I'm Diane London from Four Oaks subdivision. I am here regarding the city's bike path plan and the city's inability to listen to the citizens of our community. As a City of Dunwoody resident, I asked the council to come May 20th to a meeting held at Windward Hollow Park to see firsthand what is being planned and our concerns. I also asked the council to guarantee us a mutually agreed upon second meeting. I am presenting this request in writing and signed by over 85% of our subdivision. Several are out of town because of the late notice that we got on this meeting. The council's main responsibility is the following. Council leads and represents their communities. They must engage with their communities and encourage community participation in decision-making, while considering the needs of people currently living in the communities and those who live there in the future. I don't feel like the council is taking this responsibility seriously. I feel that they are letting a few of the city staff determine what is built in our city. I question, why do we need this 12-foot wide path? We already have a sidewalk that is never crowded. All we need is a crosswalk to safely cross a very busy road that is often used as a racetrack. The Path Foundations plan was to have this path on the reservoir side of Peeler Road. Then we heard later that the path was changed to the north side of Peeler, behind my house. I'm completely against this plan. Several neighbors and I met with Eric Linton, Michael Smith, Michelle Hirose, to present a signed petition from Four Oaks residents asking to participate in the planning of the proposed path, with several meetings to address our concerns. Since then, I have had several discussions with Michael Smith and Tom Lambert about getting meetings, only to be told, don't worry about it. We have plenty of time and nothing has been planned. Or, I understand your concerns and I agree with you on how this needs to be engineered. Then we get notification of a meeting in Windward Hollow Park to present a final plan shared with us where we can fill out comment cards. We were not included in the planning. The timing and location is inappropriate. As a City of Dunwoody resident, I again ask the council, all of you, every one of you that votes, to come to the May 20th meeting to see what is being planned and our concerns, which include flooding, security, sustainability, privacy, and sanitation. And I also ask the council to guarantee us a mutually agreed upon second meeting. I am presenting this request in writing and signed over the 85% of the subdivision. And I gave you a copy of the written request and letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Simon, approach the microphone. You'll have 3 minutes.
Tom Simon, Stevens Walk. I've been a Dunwoody resident for 46 years. Well, I'm back. It's been a while, but after reading a few of the Dunwoody Crier of past newspapers, I felt I was compelled. The Dunwoody Crier, owned by Appen Media, actively reaches out to the public to their input and concerns on local issues. We applaud the Crier's approach and only wish the City Council did the same. Most of our elected officials and government staff continue to disregard the results of the public referendum last November, 57% to 43%. The citizens of Dunwoody nixed their unreasonable and expensive plan to add 69 miles of unwanted mixed-use trails in locations where they are not wanted or needed. This is the same approach they have taken on the controversial planned path on the east side of Tilling Mill from Womack to Mount Vernon. Yet the city continues to press forward with wasteful and needless projects such as a new Winters Chapel 12-foot wide path, despite an adequate sidewalk which already exists along that road. The city and its Public Works Department also insist that the homeowners affected in Four Oaks subdivision pay for storm water repairs in their neighborhood, something for which the city is responsible, not the homeowner. The city continues to say it has plenty of money for basic government operations, yet behind the scene it is looking for ways to increase ad valorem taxes to pay for expanded city services. The city exists to provide important core government services such as police, paving streets, repairing potholes, some 6 to 9 months old, maintaining rights of way, repairing storm water systems, fixing key intersections, addressing traffic control, zoning, code compliant. We have many parks and playgrounds, and some with open space, which is desirable. The city of Dunwoody has a form of government in which people hold power, but elect representatives, a council and a mayor, to exercise that power given to them by the majority, 57% to 43% of the people, not what the mayor and council members personally want. In just over 1 year, 3 local council seats will be up for re-election. Maybe it's time to put new council members in who are focused on the essential needs first and listening to what a majority of the citizens want and need. Lastly, will someone on the council please tell their friends at the JCC to stop parking their gigantic semi-tractor trailers in the deceleration of the Stevens Walk entrances? It's illegal,
Thank you.
traffic hazard, and an
Thank you.
accident waiting to happen.
Mr. Simon.
I'm gonna try to read this. Gerald. McCarkey, maybe? McCarley. Okay, I see it's an L now. Couldn't tell if it was an L or a G, sorry. You'll have 3 minutes, sir.
I'm Gerald McCarty, as you just said, or tried to say, from
I got it once I realized.
1964 Cranbourne Court.
Mhm.
I saw in the crier dated May 9 that you have voted to move forward with a 12-foot path on Winters Chapel Road from Sherman Place to Peeler Road. It appears Mr. Hennigan is the only one that listens to the voters. We voted against the bonds, as you know, or should know. That was a vote against the 12-foot paths. I would suspect 90% of the people in Dunwoody do not want the pass. We did not move to Dunwoody for the pass. We moved to Dunwoody for quiet, residential streets with green belts. I've been living in Dunwoody for 50 years, over 50 years. You have spent about $1.7 million for about 1/3 mile of a 12-foot path already on Winters Chapel Road, when there's already a 4-foot sidewalk on the east side of the road. I travel that road about twice each week. Since that path was completed, I have seen 4 people walking on the path. Now, you want to spend another $2 million to construct another ½ mile of a 12-foot path to Peeler Road. You're going to destroy a nice green belt in front of homes and the cemetery, and as the lady said, 4 large 75 to 100-year-old hardwoods in front of a commercial business. So in total, you're going to spend about $3.7 million for less than 1 mile of a 12-foot path that is going to be used very little. There's a 4-foot sidewalk already on the east side of Winters Chapel. That is wasteful. This is a crime that should be punished. However, unfortunately, bad judgment is not a crime. Mr. Seconder was nice enough to ride with me over to Winners Chapel to see the damage you did to the homes with the present 1/3 mile 12-foot path. He had no rebuttal when I pointed out the damage. Please, please reconsider the continuing of the 12-foot paths. Do not throw good money after bad. Madam Mayor, I understand at the last meeting you had some unkind remarks to say about my friend and former accounting competitor, Bob Hickey. I was an accounting partner with Deloitte, and as you may or may not know, he was a partner with Arthur Anderson. Your remarks about his accounting abilities either says that you do not know what, you do not do your homework, or a lack of knowledge, or maybe both. Bob is doing a great service to this community in that he is trying to get you to be good stewards of the Dunwoody funds. We need more good citizens like Bob Hickey. Thank you.
Thank you. Ali Mahab.
Hello, Council. First, happy,
Oh, sorry, 1 second.
okay.
Are we ready? Okay, that's fine. Okay, go ahead.
Happy belated Mother's Day for
Thank
all
you.
that apply. Number two, I think today we're kind of looking into some consideration for parks. As a citizen, I'd like to say that I'm fully supportive of parks for kids, parks for dogs, just
Mhm.
green area, soccer fields, all of that. So I think that's a good use of tax money. In addition to that, kind of transitioning to that, normally when I come up here, I come up with a problem and a solution. So I play soccer, referee soccer, and I use Brook Run Park a lot. As you know, Brook Run Park soccer field's very busy a lot of times. Unfortunately, whenever designed, the netting is not designed well. So the fields go this way, but we play this way, and we're not that good. So balls go over the net a lot. And even with the kids, the balls go over the net a lot. Even when playing correctly at a full field, balls go over the net a lot. And so there's an issue of inconvenience and there's an issue of hazard. And so if any of you guys ever get bored and you get a chance to go behind those fields, there's like a very steep drop, there's woods, there's all sorts of different hazards there. So what I'm asking for is the problem is we have a lot of issues with a lot of people. It would benefit a lot of different people if we could just put up a little better net. I think Rush Union sponsors or does something with the fields. I think there's a little back and forth on who should cover it, Rush Union City. Ultimately, I'm asking the city to look into it. The solution is simply to put up nets. In a perfect world where money was no option, we'd have that done tomorrow, but obviously it costs some money. So I'm going to politely ask that we just look into it. I know a lot of people would really appreciate higher nets. Again, to just kind of stop different soccer balls and different things from going there. Another note is, I don't know, a lot of you have probably seen me on the sidewalk. I like to walk a lot. In addition, I've gained a lot of weight due to a lot of new restaurants in town. So I bought an electric bike. Didn't solve the problem, so I bought an electric scooter. Still didn't solve the problem, but I do use an electric scooter and an electric bike also on occasion to get to work. I take the MARTA. That stated, something very important to consider. My electric scooter can get up to 20 miles an hour. My bike can get up to 30 miles an hour being electric. Even not being electric, these things can go faster. A bike lane is very important. A sidewalk is very important. A separation of these things are very important. Using a sidewalk first is illegal for a bike or a scooter, but it's also a hazard. If I get hit on the road with my bike at a vehicle going 40 miles an hour, it is not going to end well for me. Stop and think what happens if I'm on a sidewalk and I'm on my bike and I turn a corner too fast and I hit a child at 20 miles an hour. It is not going to end well for that child. So a separation would be useful. And with my last 20 seconds, I'll say I did go on that bike ride with the Dunwoody Police Department back in. So one thing that was hilarious is we're all in a big group with Mark Stevens in the back with giant letters saying police. And there was a big SUV that passed us up who was texting and driving. A bike lane would be very helpful in that situation. It's safety. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. That concludes the cards I have. We'll have another session of public comment at the end of the meeting, should anyone want to address us then. Next up is Economic Development Update, Michael Starling.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So at your retreat earlier this year, you asked for more updates from economic development on a regular basis. So we've talked, and I'm going to come back on a quarterly basis, provide you updates. Going to hit the highlights from the quarter before prior. Going to select one commercial area to go over in a little bit more depth. Do a deep dive into a specific industry, and then highlight trends and insights that we see in the market. So if there's any specific issue that any of you are interested in, please send me an email and I'll do some research on that and bring it back at another date. I think next update will be in July, and we'll be going over the office market and Georgetown. So before we get into the highlights, I sort of wanted to start at the beginning and sort of focus on what our real core economic development goal is. There's a lot of strategies, there's a lot of tactics in economic development. Obviously, we're recruiting companies, retaining our existing companies, focused on redevelopment. But for Dunwoody, and specifically, I'm talking about the perimeter commercial district and some of our other commercial districts, place transformation is at the heart of what we're focused on. Our office market, our retail market is going to thrive if we help the commercial areas where they exist now transform from a car-oriented to more of a walkable, dynamic place, right? If you look at the office markets that are dominating right now, they're in more urban areas, they're more dynamic, they're vibrant, they have activity on the street, they have third places, coffee shops, green space, and things like that. So when we talk about economic development, I think it's always important to focus on the big idea first, and then we can get more into the tactics. And this is about not just the city doing it, but working with our private sector partners, right? It takes proactive from both public and private entities. So in the first quarter of this year, we had 59 recruitment meetings. We had 214 touch points and 67 in-person retention meetings. So we used to consider all of these touch points as retention meetings. We're sort of breaking that up to give you a little bit better idea of what this is. I mean, these touch points could be emails and phone calls from businesses, going to a business and talking to them. The retention meetings are actually either first-time companies that we're meeting with, or companies we haven't talked to in quite some time, and they're all in person. We had 7 ribbon cuttings, and we approved 11 public art. So a couple of announcements. We are going to you're going to hear a lot more about this, but we are going to do quarterly Ed City updates. One of the things that the Ed City 2.0 study asked for is that study was a beginning, it wasn't an end, and that we should continue the conversation with the community. So a little bit later this year, we're going to have our first Ed City Forum with Ellen Dunham Jones. After that, we're going to do them every quarter until we've sort of exhausted the ideas. Innova Solutions, which is a Duluth-based company, bought a building off Perimeter Center East. This is something we hope to see more of, companies taking an opportunity to buy an inexpensive piece of property. And they've already moved their headquarters in, they're renovating the top 2 floors. So that was very good news. Innova is an IT outsourcing company. They're a $3 billion international company. So over time, they're going to grow their headcount there. I think there's about 60 or 70 employees there right now. And then earlier this year, I think everybody was at this with groundbreaking, but the Dunwoody landscape was unveiled. A big project for us and very exciting for the community. One of the things that the Ed City 2.0 study did, or what the consultant did, was look a little bit behind the scenes and give us an idea of some of the industry, the future of industries, and sort of a little bit more insight. This is talking about the supportive land use and amenities that the city needs to focus on. These amenities are going to bring more office workers, they're going to bring more residents. I mean, as you can see, it's very focused on food and beverage. It's focused on entertainment, things for people to do, right? We have a very car-centric office market, and it's important that we begin to replace the surface parking lots with other uses. The good news is we have these types of places sprouting up everywhere. You can think about what David Davis has done in the Village. Ashford Lane has been very successful. And in the future, High Street and Campus 244 will offer those same kinds of things. And getting into the commercial character area, Dunwoody Village, you saw some of this data at the retreat itself. Basically the retail, other than a few long-standing vacancies, most of our retail space is full, and the office space is even more full than that. We are working with merchants in Dunwoody Village to create an association. We help them pull together meetings. We partner with the Chamber of Commerce on a quarterly basis, and they're looking at activating the village on a more regular basis. The Shops of Dunwoody has recently announced that the wine store and Summit Coffee have leased space, and they should be opening later this summer. That will leave really the Burger King as the only vacant site at the Shops of Dunwoody. Over in the village itself, Steak and Grace restaurant is taking the First Watch space. This is a steak and sushi restaurant. I think it's heavy on the steak and light on the sushi. I know a lot of you participated in lunch today next door. But it's an upscale steak restaurant, which they're very happy with. Also, the Dunwoody Gallery, a number of you have been able to go by and see that. It opened in the former bank building in the village. And then the little gym took space around back at next to Carbonara. And so I think that leaves Dunwoody Village proper with only one vacant space. So things have picked up. I know there's been a lot of discussion about coffee. You know, have we reached peak coffee, I think was the question. And we'll see. I think the market will answer that. But in areas outside of Georgia, in the Northeast and in California, there's probably a coffee shop in every strip shopping center. So I think what's happening is sort of that trend is coming our way. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. Again, if you have any specific industries that you're interested in, any specific questions, again, I'm going to be doing this quarterly. So any questions?
John.
Thank you for the presentation. Michael, can you tell us what's happening in the perimeter center? Any big movement, anything at all in the sense of our vacancy rate there?
So obviously we're dealing with high vacancy in perimeter. Everybody's struggling with vacancy. It's a national phenomena. And obviously it's a major concern for us. There are the beginnings of companies making decisions. Obviously most of these companies are on leases. They're 5, 7, 10-year leases. And as those leases burn off, this is a really good time for companies to look at options. And there are a lot of options. So there are a few things percolating. Some of them small, but Terraces last year, I think they added about 120,000 square feet of new leases. Some of that was companies in Dunwoody moving, but a lot of it was companies outside of Dunwoody moving in. I put the office market to July because I'm hoping there will be a few announcements. Campus 244 will be finished this summer, and Transportation Insight will be moving into their space. Right after that, Insight Global will be finishing off their space, and they have about 60,000 square feet on the top floor remaining. High Street has about 100,000 square feet of boutique office, and that seems to be getting a lot of attention from people. I wish I could say, you know, we've got big deals that we can talk about, but we can't. I feel that our market's in a little bit better position than others because of what's happening with our retail, with High Street, with Ashford Lane. Those amenities are going to help drive, I think, office. But it remains a major issue, and we're obviously focused on it.
Great, thank you. I know you're working hard and diligent to
Yep.
fill those office spaces. So thank you.
And we talked about this at the retreat, but you know, office is only one component of our commercial tax base. It's a big one, you know, 25%, which is a lot, but apartments make up 40% of the commercial tax base, and retail is about 20. So there are other pieces. So we need to remember that the investments that we're making to support office also supports those other uses. So if we're building better retail, if we're building parks and green space, that's going to help all of the commercial pieces, retail, apartments, and office.
Mhm. I think the Nova thing is a bigger deal than that he could have bought it's a billion-dollar company, if I'm not mistaken. 3 billion, okay, $3 billion company, could have chosen anywhere in Metro Atlanta, specifically chose Dunwoody because he likes the location. Plus his employees like the location. They were thrilled to get closer in. So I hope that's a sign of things to come. And I hope other companies, like you said, will consider buying office buildings while the opportunity is really ripe.
Yeah, his plan was to rent, to
Yeah.
lease, and his broker showed him a lot of sites, and they had chosen Perimeter as their location because and I think part of the reason Dunwoody and Perimeter succeeds is because of our location, and they found that their workforce had migrated sort of from the northern suburbs more towards the Perimeter market. So they were focused on Perimeter. And when he saw the rents, he just said, "Hey, can you find something for sale? I'd rather invest my money in a long-term asset." And I think he got a great deal, and he got a great building.
Really good building. Okay, anybody else? Joe?
A couple things. Yeah, thanks, Michael. You guys remember when we became a city, your position didn't exist. We didn't even have an economic department, and that wasn't deemed in the Carl Vincent Institute of Government necessary for the city of Dunwoody, but here we are, and it is very, very much appreciated. Could you tell me a little bit more about the Village Merchants Association? Do they meet regularly? Is it going on? Is it organic?
They have big meetings at least quarterly, when they invite all the businesses from the village. And that's growing. I mean, it's taken some time. There's a core group of merchants who come to every meeting, and that's usually the case, right? There's a small group that's dedicated. But they're probably meeting monthly on specific issues. And one of those is events. So they want to do quarterly events, much like Green Eggs and Kegs. That's David's project, but they've got a back to school event that they're putting together. They want to invest in expanding Light Up Dunwoody. So to build events around that. I mean, the Light Up Dunwoody would continue, but then they would have events throughout to sort of pull people and get them to stay longer. And they're talking about a quarterly cadence of new events.
Nice. I'll talk to our city attorney about greater participation. You said we have our local council members
Mhm.
representing. Okay.
there's
I
And
think it's
Rosemary works
Right.
to help pull that together and
Yeah.
support the chamber.
Great, thanks. And one tie-in to the village, but it was brought up at the retreat for the greater areas, was about right-of-way beautification and commercial corridors. Right, so I'm assuming you guys are still noodling on that, coming up with an idea, right? How
Yep.
we could work on that in all of our little villages
Yeah,
around the area.
and I've put Jet Ferry and Winters Chapel on later in the year, so that hopefully will give us some time to talk about some of those things. But yeah, those investments in each one of our commercial areas, which, Dunwoody is unique that obviously Perimeter is our largest commercial node.
Far.
But unlike other cities around us, we don't really have a big arterial road like Roswell Road. It's just commercial. Our commercial is pretty concentrated in small nodes, I think, and all of them are surrounded by neighborhoods. I think that's a real asset that we have that no other city that I know of
Right.
has.
And just lastly, in passing, I'm planning on attending, there's that Biz Now for June 4th
Yep.
about expanding the perimeter. So, I mean, I'm loving that agenda. It's going to be at High Street, right? And it's
Yep.
all these, the local mayors, major real estate players, developers, and so on. So that's the morning of June 4th, I believe,
June
morning
4th.
or luncheon.
It's a breakfast, and
Yeah.
that's a private group that's been doing these events for years, and they do them in all of the markets. We partner with PCID in Sandy Springs and Brookhaven, so all three cities and the PCID sort of work together to support that, so it continues to happen, and we throw out ideas about what issues they can talk about, but it is heavy on the commercial broker community and development community. And
Yeah.
so we've got a number of major developments. The Campus 244 folks are speaking, High Street is speaking, so it should be a good event.
Yeah, I really appreciate having those events here and being a participant. It's
Yep.
great information. Thank you.
Yeah, and we think the Ed City forums will be similar. They won't be geared as much towards the broker community. It's really going to be about leadership here, but a lot of the same ideas and concepts we hope to share.
Go ahead, Stacy.
Just a quick question. When you have the retention meetings, what are you hearing? Like, is there anything that surprises you? Is there any trends? Like, I know you have the supportive land uses amenities. Is that kind of what it's geared for? Or is there anything that,
It depends on who it is. If it's a larger company, like a State Farm, they are desperate for amenities like High Street. That was their first question. When is High Street going to open? Because
and the answer to that is?
it's opening late summers for early fall. For the retail, the apartments are open. You can drive in there and the little park is open. Because, all businesses are struggling to bring people back to the office, and people are coming back to the office for different reasons. So one of the things they do is they bring people in either for training or for team huddles. And it's nice for those teams to then be able to go out either to lunch together or after work. And so those entertainment uses were things that some of the bigger companies were very interested in. We talk about this internally all the time. It seems like we're taking baby steps towards more people in the office at least part of the time. That does not solve all of the issues in the office market. I mean, there's a lot of issues happening. One is interest rates are high, and it makes the valuation of buildings go down. So even if an office building is 80% leased, it doesn't mean the value of the building won't go down at some point, or they may go back to the bank. But we're starting to see more and more people in the market. Smaller businesses have more issues like directly to them. We are working with a partner, and we'll talk about this at the next meeting, to continue to support entrepreneurs and innovation. And so we are partnering with an organization that's going to provide training and mentorship to small businesses and entrepreneurs. And so we'll talk more about that at the next meeting. But that's one of the things. They're just, small businesses just need resources, capital, connections, ideas and information. Yep.
Anybody else? Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Eric, you're next, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So we have the monthly report ending May 10th, 2024. We changed the format of this a little bit from the last time, trying to make it more streamlined. The Parks Department, we have Food Truck Thursday, season opener this Thursday, May 16th. Also, we have the kickoff to summer at Two Bridges Park, opening of the water park on May the 24th. June 8th, Groovin' on the Green series opener featuring Deep Velvet. We also have the Spruill Center for the Arts Pavilion and Band Shell has been completed, and it's open for community use at this point. Brook Run hosted a total of 37,694 visitors over a 5-day period at Lemonade Days. The greatest visit count was on Saturday, April the 20th, with almost 15,000 visits, and the participants stayed an average of 2 hours at the park. The Governor's Office of Highway Safety did a hands-free detail. It had 92 citations issued. That was, of course, I switched to the police department at this point. And a lot of that was on Ashford Dunwoody. If anybody traveled down Ashford Dunwoody during that time, they saw the event occurring. Also hired our fleet manager position. This was a new position that was created in the budget for this year. This helps to free up one of the officers where they don't have to worry about the operations of the cars and other equipment that we have within the department. The Teen Police Academy registration has started. We have Cops on Donut Shop Special Olympics fundraiser on the June the 7th, and the Real Time Crime Center is scheduled to open June 1st. We have Detective Eric Havlin was recognized as our 2024 Officer of the First Quarter, and also CST Civil Hall was recognized as our 2024 Employee of the First Quarter for that department. There is a data link within the report. And also if you have under our transparency page under the police department, you can have a list of all the different events that have occurred within the police department. That is something that I took out of the report this time. It was just getting more and more lengthy. So I took that out and we'll look for the different highlights within that department. Public Works, Ashford Dunwoody Phase 1 path, the bike path has been completed and street lights have been installed. The remaining work includes completing of the plaza and intersections and landscaping. So there's a picture of also showing that within the report. May 20th, which is next week, we're going to begin our annual paving. So be on the lookout for your street being paved. There's a list we have on our website of the streets that will be paved this year. And also if you have any questions about your street, there should be a notice in there showing when it will be paved. Also look out for our notifications in the neighborhoods of when we're going to pave. We try to put door hangers out and talk to the residents of when your street's going to be paved, so nobody is surprised about that. June, we'll begin the pedestrian beacon construction on Perimeter Center West and North Peachtree Road. Those two projects will begin. Also, the Georgetown Gateway, the contractor has completed 380 feet of sidewalk and 400 feet of path. In May, the final sections of the sidewalk and path will be completed. The new cotillion signal will be turned on and the paving and punch list work is planned for June. So that project is coming towards completion. Under the, one other item is Brook Run's maintenance facility. Parks and Public Works have reviewed the architect's schematic plan for the building program. That will be built in the park, and that's a special project that was desperately needed, and we look forward to getting that building online. Had a couple of press releases, storefront art, video, sustainability heroes, and PCID, Dunwoody Police Safety Partnership. There's a picture of that within your report under the communications tab. Community development, we have High Street, as we heard a little bit from Michael about High Street, is continuing to close out its closeout process. A CO for the commercial buildings is expected this month. And at the time, the central green and grand staircase will be accessible to the public. If you have not been over there, I encourage you to go over there and take a look. It's an amazing facility right here within the city. And it's something that's really going to draw a lot of interest to the area. And it goes back to what Michael was talking about with economic development. The Campus 244 is nearing completion of its temporary certificate of occupancy. The first tenant is scheduled to move in the summer. Under the data section of this, the building division has completed 539 inspections during this period. Code enforcement's also been very busy with 82 inspections, 51 new complaints, and 31 cases brought into compliance. And as the public knows, code enforcement operates on a complaint-generated system. So when you do have an issue, please send that in. You can multiple ways to send it in: the website, email, telephone. Send that to us and we'll take a look at those. Our goal is for compliance, but of course we do take people to court when things are not in compliance and there are signs issued and sometimes more stiffer penalties in certain circumstances. We removed 109 signs out of the right of way that were illegal. Staff issued 32 code enforcement warnings and 2 citations during this time. And we have begun our completed, our apartment sweep and inspected 265 dwelling units. The department received 117 permit applications and issued 87 permits during this time. And also 52 erosion control inspections were done. Very busy department and a good sign of what's going on in the community. Under economic development, we hosted the annual Asian American and Pacific Islanders Heritage Celebration at Ashford Lane. We also had the 3rd annual Dunwoody Village Storefront Art exhibition, kicked off with 15 paintings created by the Dunwoody High students, and they were displayed at the Dunwoody Village businesses. Here again, a great community outreach there to have this artwork shown. And then a new mural was installed at the Park Place Shopping Center by Savannah-based artist. All right, Richard, Michael, you have to help me out with that. Julia, okay, thank you. The department conducted 53 retention meetings and also conducted 14 business recruiting meetings during that time. So it is something that I want to put emphasis on, that it is the economic development is trying to continue to have Dunwoody thrive by putting a tremendous investment into economic development and into our city. Finance, there's a great report from March of 24 can be found. There's a link within that report that of course is on our website as well. And the ARPA and CARES pages were updated through the end of March. And also we had our first quarter 2024 capital project review meeting was held internally. That's a new meeting we're holding now. And that's something that the assistant city manager and I have been working diligently on, along with the department heads. And this also, it's a capital project meeting, but also any kind of project. So if there's a project that the council has in mind or you want to follow up on, please be sure to let me know. I want to be sure we keep that on this project list, so it's nothing is dropped off accidentally. Municipal court is preparing for court amnesty program in July. This is something that we've done for, I don't know, Sharon, how many years now, but numerous of the past years. Once again, this is a big public outreach for people who have old court fines. If they come in July, those can be erased. And I want to state the urgency of that. If somebody has a violation or they didn't show up for court for some reason, they could get pulled over in another jurisdiction and be taken to jail till they get that rectified. This is a huge service that we provide, so people can clear those fines and tickets up without having to be inconvenienced to being pulled over and taken to jail over what could be a minor violation at this point. Anyway, Mayor and Council, that's the report. I'm glad to answer any questions. We have the majority of our staff here as well to answer any questions that may come up.
Questions? Catherine?
Thanks, Eric. I noticed that you, under Parks, talked about quotes for the turf at Peachtree Middle School. Do you have a signed school agreement or a deadline for that?
We do not have an agreement from the school just yet. We were trying to see what kind of price range that would be in. We have a couple of quotes. Of course, the quotes are much higher than what we can quote. It has to be bid out, but we wanted to see what kind of price range that we're in. And so we are awaiting word from the school. And then if that occurs, we'll bring something to y'all as far as to take a look at approving.
So if, that is still an if. Thanks.
Fails. Thank you. I had a question for Rachel. Is she still here? Okay. The Two Bridges Park, like
Yes.
the official opening is Friday, but you're gonna run it.
So the season will start May 24th.
Well, I meant that Friday, yeah,
Yep,
May
and then
24th.
it'll run through September 22nd.
Right, but you're gonna like run it during the week leading up to it to make sure we don't have any surprises.
Yes.
So soft opening or not, but you're gonna practice, I guess is what I'm gonna say. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No fireworks. Okay, thank you. Consent agenda, does anybody have questions on the items on the consent agenda?
Move to approve.
Moved by Rob, second by Joe, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I guess there was no discussion. Any opposed, say nay. Sharon, that passes unanimously.
The first item under business action items is a contract with TSW for Comprehensive Plan and Unified Development Code. Richard McLeod.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As I presented this last meeting, it's an action to authorize the mayor, city manager, or designee to execute all documents necessary and proper to sign the contract with TSW to lead the team in doing the comprehensive plan and the unified development code. This is subject to legal review. I've emailed Ken and the attorney last week, so they are working on it. At the past meeting on April 29th, City Council asked if we could include several of the additional services such as the quality of life element, the small area plan, code testing, and the technical manual for additional services. I did contact TSW, especially on the Georgetown plan specifically. try to define that area. So they modified their price for that. It brought it down to $101,560 for all 4 of them. But staff and I met, Eric Linton, we feel like we should proceed with the original scope of this because we'd have to do a budget amendment because we're right up against the budget. And I did talk to TSW. They will hold the price on adding those things, so we could add those when they come up. So example, enter them into the 2025 budget, and we could begin them with that. So.
And Mayor, if I may add
Yes.
a few comments to that, to what Richard's saying. And on that, even though, like I said, Richard did speak to them, they're gonna hold the price. What I wanted to do was kick the project off to get things moving, to see exactly which areas we would want to study, because there could be plus or minus, from what's on the original, from what we talked about at the last council meeting. And also I wanted to see at what depth the standard package would do for us on any special studies as well. Occasionally, sometimes it depended on the scope of the service. Once a vendor gets into it, they may include a area or two as part of the comprehensive plan. So I didn't want to commit to paying them additional if it was going to be in the standard package. But we do have that reserved, and I didn't want them to be distracted, by the main part.
Okay.
I keep rambling, I'm sorry. but
That's okay. You're
where
fine. You're fine. That's enough. Anybody else? Questions? Any questions, Tom?
Thank you, Richard. We had our big discussion on this and not really much, just on the quality of life add-on thing as far as the comprehensive plan. And just a reminder to the public, the comprehensive plan is something we're required to do by law. This isn't just an arbitrary thing we're doing. The update to it. So I think that was under $6,000. Is that something? And so I had 2 questions on that. Are we going to add that? And if you remember the last time, one of my concerns is that this will actually be a discussion with the public as far as what we're looking for in quality of life and not just a boilerplate addition to our plan. I want it to be specific for Dunwoody and to have input from our residents on it. So is that what it is? And is that something that will be included in this process? Because I'm concerned that we get down the road and we've already had public engagement and we miss our opportunity to do that.
So I called TSW for them to comment on that. It's specifically about schools and parks. Is that quality of life element. So it's not required in the comprehensive plan, but it can be easily added. But since we're in almost halfway through the year and haven't started yet, we could easily add it later on.
And we have nothing, I mean, we can ask all the questions we want about schools. So maybe there's a way they can incorporate the parks question in their main planning. There's got to be other stuff in their main planning that we don't do in Dunwoody, like we don't do drinking water, for example. I mean, maybe there's other stuff that they could substitute swaps out, because parks are important. We can ask all the questions we want about schools, but we have literally zero control. Anybody else have questions? I have one question.
Yes.
Well, one question for this. So we're confident that they understand that community outreach has to be above and beyond?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then also, it's not just the comprehensive plan, we're reviewing and rewriting our unified code, which is way out of date.
That's correct. And we're actually, most of the energies we spent on rewriting our
Okay.
code.
And then the Edge City plan, which we spent a lot of
Mhm.
time on, that's just gonna be absorbed into the like, they're not gonna try to reinvent what we've already done for perimeter, correct?
Correct. They're gonna look at the perimeter CID.
Right.
Area. They're gonna look at the Edge City, and they're gonna incorporate all that into the code. So
Okay,
Mayor, I
Uh-huh.
have one comment
Yeah.
when it's time.
that's fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
This is the 100-page deal with a lot of attachments, right?
yes.
Okay. I would just say if y'all go to approve it tonight, please approve it subject to final legal review. We will not make substantive money
Right.
changes, but there are some legal parts of it that are back and forth. I know y'all want to get it moving. I just want to make sure, we may make some edits
That's
that
fine.
we see as a legal edit, not as a substantive edit.
Okay. All right, is there any other questions? This is an action item. Stacy, since you wrote down the motion, do you want to make it?
Sure.
It's great.
Move to approve, subject to legal review.
Second.
moved by Stacy, second by Tom. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
The next item is an ordinance to amend the city of Dunwoody zoning classification and map for zoning conditions of lot parcel number 18-329-04-011 in consideration of zoning case RZ 15-072 for 245 Perimeter Center Parkway from Plan Development Conditional PDC District to Plan Development Conditional PDC Zoning District.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. I will keep it brief. This is the second read for the rezoning of phase 3 of the Park Center development. We held a public hearing in April. We didn't have public comment at that meeting. We held a second public hearing in front of the Planning Commission. Was also no public comment made at that meeting, and the staff hasn't received any public comment since the first read. You all didn't have any requests for changes to the applicant as well, and the applicant hasn't made any modifications to the plans either. So what's before you all tonight is the same thing you have seen in April. With this, I'll keep it concise. I'll be ready for any questions, and we have the applicant here, and the applicant brought their architect as well, so they'll be ready for any questions you may have too.
Okay, does anybody have any questions? John?
Thank you. I see that we're having 300 multifamily residential units and up to 175 hotel rooms with associated meeting space. How big is that meeting space? Are we looking at a convention size? Give us, meeting space is something that we don't have here in Dunwoody. So just those words alone are exciting to me, but I'd love to get the architect and the development team to tell me what their plans are in the sense of the multifamily, the hotel, the meeting space. Go for it, gentlemen.
Good evening, everyone. Jim George with KDC. The meeting space that we're referring to is about 5,000 square feet of space
It's pretty
within the program.
Okay. That's it. Anybody else? John?
I was trying to understand the scope of the meeting space. Was it part of the hotel? I'm guessing it's part of the hotel.
That's correct.
And the hotel is, I presume, though you probably don't have a partner identified, that your current vision is for, what do you call, like not a boutique, but not like a convention hotel?
That's right. It's
Okay.
intended to be a boutique lifestyle hotel
Yeah.
is the parlance that our consultant is using.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? It's an action item. Oh, did you have something to say, Rob? Oh, okay, that's fine. Comments or questions?
So I'm just gonna reiterate what I said last time around, which is that I really like this project. I think it's in an ideal location for the city. It's kind of the most urban corner of the city. It's right next to MARTA. I think it brings a nice enhancement to the area. And I think it's a really nicely designed project, and it fits really well where it is. So thank you.
Thank you.
Move to approve.
Moved by Tom. Second by Joe. Any further discussion or comments? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that passes unanimously. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very, very much.
Thanks so much.
Chief Carlson, I think, is next. Right?
Yes.
Chief, you're up. Sorry.
Yes. Request for additional personnel, public safety ambassadors, Chief Carlson.
Good evening again. So it was brought up, last council meeting in regards to, the salary that was going to be offered for the public safety ambassadors. I met with HR and finance, and it was adjusted. As soon as I get, to a pay grade of 104, which the starting minimum would be 47,146, to a maximum of 75,434. That would adjust For a full year, it was 445, 400, and it'll bring it down to 420, 960 for the employees, and that will be the first full year. The first, or from June 1st, if approved, the amount needed would be 259, 820 for personnel.
All right, this is a business item. It's an action item.
Move to approve.
Moved by Stacy.
Second.
Second by Tom. Any questions or discussion? Me too. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chief, for explaining the pay aspect. I just want to confirm first off that the duties haven't changed at all.
Correct. They have
Right.
not changed.
So we've adjusted the pay, but not the duties based on council's or comments and your re-review of it with the personnel, and I see personnel nodding behind you. I'm guessing the memo still on the front page says you would start with 2 or 3 based on your conversation. You said you're going to try to get all 4.
All 4 with 2 vehicles.
And your memo on the front page still says the same price, the 353 for the first year cost, but that's different from what you just said, right?
Correct.
So the first year was, what was it again?
259, 820.
Okay, I'm good. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you reevaluating the salaries. I think we had some concerns. Tell me a little bit about the other things, like this includes uniforms and vehicles, the 250 or whatever the number is.
Correct.
Includes uniforms and vehicles. And in case anyone listening doesn't understand what this position is, these are not welcome wagon ladies. Though the ambassador make sound that it's, they'll be hired to perform many roles that take our police off their most important duties. They will be waiting for tow trucks, which is a major issue, and we have about 1,000 incidents on 285 alone a year. They will take reports. They'll be able to take reports.
Non-critical incidents.
Non-critical
So-
incident reports. Like if some people are advised to file a police report when they lose their credit card or their driver's license. Hopefully one day we'll have technology that'll handle that for us. But in the meantime, these positions will be able to do things, perform tasks that tie up our police and keep them from being able to answer other calls potentially.
Correct. They can refocus on critical incidents and being proactive and preventing crime.
And our hope is that at least some of these people who choose this role will eventually choose to be sworn officers, correct?
That is a possibility.
Right.
So from what we've seen with other departments, it's an array. So there's some that just want to do that. And then, yes, it has the potential for hiring younger because you can apply at 18 years old and then with the potential of them becoming a police officer if they choose to go that route.
And you'll define the shifts based on need, I presume.
Correct.
Okay.
We've come up with a tentative shift and obviously we'll adjust as needed.
Okay. Go ahead, Rob.
Actually, Lynn's comments led me to a question I hadn't thought of before, which is you mentioned they're going to have uniforms. I'm just curious, what will they look like? I'm hoping they'll be distinct from our sworn officers' uniforms so you can tell them apart pretty easily.
Very. I have a command staff meeting every Monday and we discussed that this morning. So basically it's going to be a high visibility type uniform. Basically similar to what our bicycle uniforms look like if you've seen any of us on there. So they're actually going to be brighter, they're going to be very visible. They will not look like a police officer. We're going to come up with their own patch. Something that'll just, they're going to stand out. Their vehicles will clearly say public safety ambassadors are going to have yellow lights, LED lights that will not make them look like a police officer. We don't want to put them in a situation where,
Kind of my secondary concern.
Yes,
is
sir.
Someone will come up and say, "Officer, I have."
correct, but they'll have radios, they can contact us directly. And, if anything rises any higher than a non-critical situation, we'll be there to respond to assist them in any way.
And
Mayor, if you're okay,
Yes.
Chief, explain the vehicles too. They're quite different than the normal patrol cars.
They are. So the vehicles we're looking at, we were looking at 2 different, they're called Ford Mavericks. It's basically just a smaller Ford Ranger. They're going to be, pickup trucks, so they can carry barricades, equipment to assist stranded motorists being able to change tires, and just providing that another level of service out there if we can't get Hero to the scene out on the interstates. And like I said, it frees up the officers so they can do other proactive enforcement.
Joe, go ahead.
Thank you, Chief. Again, appreciate this too. And I was trying to, we see the job description here and anecdotally trying to memorize, obviously we got so many stuff.
Mhm.
Somebody I was talking to like a week ago trying to explain it. I'm like, let me get back to you. So when we do come online, if we get like these are the sworn, like a table, right? Left, right columns. This is what the sworn, this is what they do, just so we have a quick, be great to have at their handy reference pocket guide or something. Thanks.
And we're not inventing this, just to be clear. This is not a Dunwoody invention. Other departments use this as a tool.
Very common. Yes,
Right.
ma'am.
Okay. This is an action item.
We have a motion.
Oh, we have a motion?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously, Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor and
Start
Council.
writing down the motions.
The next item is approval of a contract and funding authorization for phase 2 of the Vermac Path at Dunwoody High School. Todd Meadows.
Good evening. We're excited about getting started on the second phase of Vermac Path out in front of Dunwoody High School. If you recall, last year we presented and completed the section from the south driveway entrance into the high school up to Vanderlyn. This phase will include the path from the Womack intersection up to that connection point at the driveway, the south end driveway. We've, in order to execute that work, we received bids or quotes from 3 qualified contractors for the path construction, and Soul Construction, who did Dunwoody Road recently, was the preferred low bidder there. And we're requesting funding for them and a contract in the amount of $108,250.90 plus 10% contingency, which we pretty frequently carry on these contracts. Secondly, there's a stormwater aspect to the project that is going to be constructed on the opposite side of the street, on the west side. And we elected to use the Southern Premier Contractors, our on-call stormwater contractor, to install that network. It's a fairly large diameter section of pipe. It will affect 3 residents on the west side of Vermac across the street. The contracts will occur concurrently, and we intend to begin work shortly after school lets out. So we hope to minimize any kind of impact on the high school. I think that's it, unless there are any questions.
Questions, anybody? John, then Joe.
Thank you for the presentation. Can you tell me about the width, in the sense it's 12 feet, the trees that are there? I went by today and I noticed there's trees. What are we taking out? What are we putting back? What's happening with those trees that were planted not too long ago, as far as I know?
Pretty much actually all of those will have to come out because the path, it's a fairly narrow section there from the back of curb to the fence line.
Right.
So if you've noticed you can actually kind of get a visual. In fact, if you look at page 3 of the presentation, you can kind of see there's about a 2-foot buffer from the edge of the trail to the fence line. That's pretty typical, and that'll carry on down to about where the trailers are. And so in order to put in the path, the trees will have to come out. We haven't discussed it with the school, but we do have I've seen some ideas about how I think we could replant, as long as they give us access, and replant those between the trailers. There's some areas I think where we could replant the trees at a not the same ones. We'd have to plant new trees.
Okay, so we're taking out the trees.
We are taking out the trees.
We don't really have a plan to put them back as of yet.
We don't currently, but I saw they had ribbons on them, and I thought that might be something that might come up.
I think the ribbons are in memory of a child who died in October. They're not really related to the tree.
Okay. But also because of our tree policy, we do want to, we'll find a place to replant to meet our.
So the trail is pretty much going to go right up to the fence line then.
Very close to the edge.
And we're not going to be taking out or going over the fence or changing the fence that the school system has put in?
That's correct. There is going to be lighting. That'll be a second, but that'll be my next presentation after this. But we can.
Right, lighting's next.
Lighting's next. That's all. I'll have questions there too. And as far as the intersection, are we changing the crosswalk aspect? I mean, what's the,
The path actually begins just slightly north of the intersection. So bicyclists that are coming up northbound from Womack will be able to enter and come onto the path. Just maybe 15 feet or so up from the crosswalk. And then the current sidewalk that's there will tie into the path at that.
okay,
at
so
that
we're not
point.
changing the crossings right there.
No, sir, we don't plan to.
Okay.
We may restripe if they're faded or just in the process of.
All right. I really wish we had drawings. I wish we had something to look at. That's me. What about the parking spots? How are we losing any parking spots on this one?
No, we're not changing anything about the parking
Got it,
configuration.
right.
It'll obviously be, that section will be, and I meant to mention this earlier, we do intend to close that section from Womack up to the south driveway in order to expedite the construction just during the summer. And we think it'll be about a 4 to 5 week closure. Residents will still have access to their driveways there. And of course, there'll still be access to all of the school entrances.
All right. And then as far as the stormwater, that will be going on concurrently. So the street will be completely dug up, the sidewalk, the new path will be put in, and then the stormwater will be done, and then we're gonna repave that whole section.
The section that is closest to the storm line that's in front of the 3 houses, from the center line to the curb line, will be paved, milled and paved.
All right, so we're not paving the whole street, we're just paving the section that we dig.
Right, where we're doing because we'll have some road widening there, and they actually have to, in order to stay within the right of way on that side, because of the location of a gas main and the size of the pipe, a portion of it actually comes up underneath the curb line. So they do have to remove the curb line, and we'll be doing some excavation into the road as they install that line, the 60-inch line.
All right, thank you. I guess I'll defer to others.
Rob.
I have more of a comment than a question, and just looking at the pictures in the packet reminded me of this. The sidewalk we have right now is, from an ADA compliance standpoint, awful. I mean, there are utility poles right in the middle of the sidewalk.
Right.
So just in terms of giving students and people that are traveling through that area the ability to travel through there if they can't walk, I think is important. So I'm just, like I said, this just reminded me, that's one of the reasons we focused on this project last year, and I'm glad to see that the second phase of it is coming in today. Thank you.
Stacy.
Just a quick question. I was kind of surprised that this had to come in front of us again. So we had a different contractor do the first phase?
We did. It was Autico, who's our on-call,
Yeah.
currently our on-call contractor.
And did they not bid on it, or?
They did. We received, we confirmed pricing using their unit cost pricing as a comparison. Frankly, because of the work they're currently doing on Ashford Dunwoody Road trail in front of the mall, they'll also be doing some work at the intersection of Hammonds and Ashford Dunwoody in conjunction with the trail. We didn't want to divert their attention from those, from that work. And
But we were happy with their work on,
Yes,
okay. I
yes,
mean, from what I've seen, it looks good. Okay.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. That's all.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna point out too, I think probably a part of that too is the time frame.
Yeah.
The reason it was broken into 2 parts was so that we could complete the work during the summer to avoid conflicts with the school
Correct.
and minimize the impact there. So I imagine that was a part of it, that they were available. We can get this done and be, if not completely complete, substantially complete before school resumes.
Correct. That was we knew we couldn't violate that aspect of the work.
So I have a little history on the whole fence and trailers and trees, which was the trailers are fairly new on that side of the campus, I think in the last 5 or 6 years, but the COO of the school system told me recently that some of the trailers are leaving. But when they put the trailers in, they actually installed one of them in our right of way, including the fence. So they had to move the trailer, move the fence. So the fence is right on the right of way line. Like it's as close as it could get. I have a feeling they'll welcome the trees because they're gonna have more room because the CEO tells me they're gonna remove trailers. So we shall see. But I think that we can find places on that campus to plant them. Good, Joe.
Thank you, Todd. Just a couple, I've got a few just perspective. This is when we say the word trail I know we have all these different plans. Are there any plans to connect these other, what would go north and south of this? And when would that be built? Is there any connection to that when we say it's a trail? Because when I think of trails, I think of there's a
Right.
connection to some community center, node, or destination origin.
I'll let Michael speak to
Yeah,
it.
that's in the trail master plan. This piece is in there, and then Womack, I think in the master plan is a cycle track, or it might be a path, depending on what part of Womack you're on. So it's in the master plan, and there's some connectivity shown there, but there's the master plan does not include extending the path up and down Vermac.
Okay.
It's just in front of the high school.
Fair enough. It's all semantics to me. I can call this a nice streetscape and a sidewalk improvement project as well. We just got an email literally during council by a gentleman named Todd Helton, and I just want to ask a couple of comments here. I don't know this. He said an ADA compliant sidewalk only needs to be 36 inches. I thought that sounds like 3 feet wide. It doesn't sound like, that sounds like too narrow to me. I'm sure not to put anybody on the spot right now. 36 inches is ADA. That's only 3 feet.
Yeah, I think we'd have to dig into that. come
Okay,
Back with an answer.
fine. And then he talked about, he said homeowners investing a lot of time and money in maintaining the area, landscape tree buffers that have maybe been built before the house was built. This is all in front of the school property, right? This is not in front of any homes.
Well, the storm portion is on where the homes are across the street from the school. So
Oh.
from and it's primarily the two driveways. It's not the corner house that we won't be affecting the first driveway closest to Womack, but we will be affecting the right of way in front of the two other houses
That's to do with stormwater improvement.
to put in the
correct?
stormwater improvement.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
so, yeah, that's a
Yes.
holistic kind of viewpoint. I get that. Perfect. And then I'm just kind of throwing out, you mentioned the trees and I saw that and it kind of alluded to that as well. And I know that the train left the station. We already have the project let to bid, but would there be any thoughts right now? The trees look like it would be so imagine here's your on-street parking, there's the curb and gutter, then there's maybe a 2-foot buffer.
It's
if any,
it's either 2 or 3 feet. I can't remember the
Right.
exact dimension, but it's narrow.
and then the
And
12.
and the majority of that is stamped concrete. So I don't
Mm.
know if you've seen what they did in front of the school, but it's very similar to what was.
Yeah, there's,
done in
and
front of
then the
school.
12-foot, and then potentially a tree. Is there any, I know people hate it when you last minute and you come up with this stuff, of going to a 10-foot wide and having could we get to a legitimate landscape buffer where we could put the trees closest to the curb, i.e. when we don't have cars parallel parked there and it's just motor vehicles moving by, for me, the best practice is to have a landscape buffer between the curb and that person using the facility. Right? So it's like, okay, here's the motor vehicles going 40 miles an hour. Here's the people. Is there any consideration maybe shifting things and going to a 10-foot wide or whatever to get that buffer closer to the curb and gutter versus with actual trees versus over along it's midstream of the project going?
Yeah, if my memory serves me right, I think we had this discussion when the project first came to us, and it was a function thing because the primary purpose for this segment of trail is to service the high school students that will be parking along there, and putting a buffer kind of restricted, it conflicted with the parking and the access to the students to get on there. So that was the primary reason for it. It was more of function for the purpose of where it was located.
All right.
'Cause I do remember us having that discussion when this project originally came to us.
Yeah, and actually on-street parking when the cars are there is a buffer de facto anyway,
Right.
to protect those people. So,
Not
yeah,
that
and
clear.
anything we do to get trees put in somewhere along that segment, absolutely would want to try for that. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
The stormwater project, is that an opportunist? Like, are we doing it because we're already in the area?
No, ma'am, it's actually, because we're increasing the impervious area, we had to do a hydraulic, study to make sure that we were accommodating the additional storm runoff. We also, increased the pipe size to accommodate up to a 500-year storm. So it helps to minimize any kind of risk to the residents on the other side with the additional runoff.
So what's your plan to protect landscaping on the other side? Have you gotten that far yet?
It's primarily sod, so we would just be replacing it with sod.
So you're not going into their trees or bushes
No,
as
ma'am,
far as you know?
it's-
Okay,
Yeah, it's very, that area is pretty,
all right.
um,
Eric, will you follow up with that, please, next week, just to make sure, or this week to make sure that that we do everything we can. Okay. All right, this is an action item.
Would approve.
Second.
All in favor? I guess there's no,
Aye.
any opposed, hearing none, it passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, I have a question about this issue before you go any further. That was the next thing. Have we seen this before at all, Michael? The lighting plan?
Not specifically. I mean, there were lights on the original design plan, but
Okay.
this specific plan you haven't seen.
So I think we should have a presentation tonight and vote on it in 2 weeks or whenever our next meeting is. Or just don't vote on it. He can make his presentation now because he's here. There's no, right, Ken? And then we just can not vote on. Okay, whatever, but we don't have to move it on the agenda because he's up there. He might as well make the presentation now. Sorry, go ahead.
It's fine. Yes, ma'am. So this next proposal is to approve the lighting services agreement with Georgia Power for the pedestrian lighting that will line the path from Womack up to Vanderlyn. Georgia Power provided us with a quote, and lighting survey, pole location plan, and photometrics that service the path and provide lighting that is required for light levels that are required for the path, particularly at the driveway entrances and at the intersections. It's notable, I believe there may have been an email, I think that was circulated earlier with concerns about light levels on the opposite side of the street.
Yes.
The way this lighting is, the photometrics show that by the time you get to the curb on the west side of Vermac, where the houses are, the light levels are at about 10% of the light level so it's diminished as you get closer to the curb on the opposite side of the street. And so this request would be for funding up to $193,905 for the actual installation, the purchase and installation of the 21 light poles. And then there is an ongoing maintenance and service fee of $601.44, which it was we've already had a few, I know, struck on Winters Chapel and other places. So the Georgia Power comes out and fixes them up fairly quickly once we sign these agreements.
Okay. Questions, discussion? What you're saying is that, well, first of all, are these the same light poles that we're using in other places like in Georgetown? Because
Yes,
one picture, and are there existing light poles now on this stretch?
there are no light poles. There
Okay.
are some pole mounted lights.
Right, well, that's kind of what I meant. So those will go away?
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Questions at this time? John?
Thank you for the update. You mentioned that lighting is required when it's a path.
Right.
Now, this is a path that really goes nowhere. We've pretty much just said it's a sidewalk in front of Dunwoody High School. tell me more about the requirement, the minimum requirement for lighting on this facility.
I'm not,
Maybe.
Well, you said you had to have lights at the intersection and near the driveways.
my understanding is that when you have a path intersecting that driveway, there is a certain light level that is required, certain foot candles.
So the driveway that they're intercepting is the high school driveway,
That-
correct? Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so we put one there. All right, go ahead.
2.
Okay, all right, but
And
I'm
then I
trying to look at
believe
the
there-
minimum
and then there are other
requirements.
parameters for, and again, I'm not conversant with the
Right.
design aspect to be able to tell you what that level is, but they come up with an equidistant spacing and to try to conform with a certain light level to make the path safe and make people feel like they're
I voted for
Well,
this previous item for the sidewalk in front of Dunwoody
Right.
Heights to make sure that they were safe. The right of way, the access, the width.
Right.
As far as the lighting, I'm not sure I need to light that 24, all night long. I want to put in the minimum requirements, me personally, I want to put in the minimum requirements that's required for the high school for that path. If you say there is a minimum requirement by law or by standard, I want to do that. I don't want to overkill that section of Vermac with lights up and
Right.
down with this many lights. To me seems we're overdoing.
I know the original design they came to us with had spacing at 40 feet. We looked at 80 and we felt like it was too far apart. We ended up being around 65 feet or so apart on average, or 73 actually.
And again, I don't know how many lights are on poles to light the street. Are these lights intending to light the streets or just
It's
for
primarily
the path?
Yes, sir.
Again, I'm just having issues with this in the sense of the ongoing cost and the overkill for the lighting for nowhere else in the city are we doing this like this. And this is also going to be a standard. Once we do this here, you're going to want to do the same thing on all along Brook Run Park, and you're going to want to do it all in front of Peachtree Middle School and Chestnut and everywhere else. I think this is overkill. That's me personally. I'll let others talk, but that's where I'm at.
So I have a question. First of all, I kind of agree with John, and Michael, this question is more for you than Todd. So we're adding 21 lights on what I consider an enhanced sidewalk project. We can call it a trail, but it's not going anywhere. And what I want to say is that the Ashford Center Parkway, where people have shown up at our meetings in the past to ask for more lighting, is brutally dark at night. I mean, brutally, like scary. And there are actually people who are employed in the village who have to walk back here to get public transportation. So it seems to me that 21 lights just might be too much for this area. I mean, I want it bright enough for security for the kids when they have an evening activity or extracurricular, but we've not had any complaints about the current lighting in that aspect. So since the purpose of this stretch of sidewalk was to serve the high school kids and with ADA issues, and we had to go wide to, deal with some of the other challenges of the parcel and trees and utilities, it seems like maybe we could I'm one person, we could relook at what we're putting there, potentially. I don't know. It just seems like a lot when there are other there are a lot of places in the city that could use lights. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree with the expense. I do have some experience in this though, and the lighting is an important part of security. And much of the school year in the morning, it's dark out there as well. A lot of unsavory things can happen in the dark, especially in front of a high school. So I would want to make sure that the safety of the students and the people using this facility is at the top of the list, and lighting is a part of that. So I
Shouldn't have less than what we have now.
right.
The question is how much more than what we have now do we need? That's the way to me, that's the way to look at it, is how much more do we need? And this could be I haven't been out there, I haven't counted the lights. But, you know, that's, I mean, that, we're not gonna answer that tonight,
Right.
but we're gonna bring this back in a couple of weeks, whenever you're ready. Joe?
From time to time, if we think about when we had the Path Foundation, I wanted to define a streetscape standard and the lighting standard, we did not really define. And when we continue on this lighting conversation, of course, I wasn't on council when the first streetlights that we put in as a city, I believe, was on Dunwoody Village Parkway. And I don't know if the city council said, this is the standard going forward at that time, 10 years ago, that will deployed citywide. I know CID has some things, but there is a street lighting. And what is that designed for? Is it designed for the person, the motorists on that facility? Is it designed for the pedestrians? Is it designed for all of them? So when I look at this lighting, I'd like to focus on what is the intent? Are we to illuminate the entire Vermac Road for all users? Or do we just want to have the intent of having that wide sidewalk illuminated for people that are using that sidewalk? And if you do a Google search for pedestrian lighting, you can get lighting that's only, 5 feet tall. And it just points right down to the there. It's bollards, it's very low, it doesn't shine out around, it doesn't give you light pollution, it just literally illuminates the path as you're walking in front of. And I'm a big proponent of that in many places throughout our city, right? Because we have these existing legacy big LED retrofitted lights all over the city, but then we have these dead spaces for sidewalks and so on. Let's just stick those little bollards up and put them in very, very nice and subdued. So, I mean, I'd like to keep that in the mix. And maybe we could take a photo. What does it look like? I'm doing Google Street View right now. I don't know if there's existing lights. What does it look like today at 10 p.m.? And in the packet, I'd like to see a photo. I mean, if it's literally the street lamp that you're proposing, that's new in Georgetown or new in Chamblee, Dunwoody, I guess that is what it is, but or on Winter Chapel. But again, I like that pedestrian level lighting or the sidewalk level lighting.
Yeah, I think Joe summed it up. What are we trying to do here with this need? And then if we can shave enough money, maybe we can do Ashford Center Parkway. Just saying that that's a pretty hot need as security and everything else. Okay, we'll see this again. So do we need to do anything?
Well, Madam Chair, I think you got two options.
Okay.
You could postpone it, a motion to postpone, and it will definitely be heard at the next, wherever you postpone it to. If you table it, it would have to be removed from the table at a later date. But a postponement under Robert's Rules of Order is this body directing, we want to hear it again at whatever meeting you designate.
Can we say a time and then?
If you want to, you could consider a motion to postpone this agenda item for discussion at the next meeting or as a business item at the next meeting and do whatever you want at that meeting.
Okay, someone want to make a motion? Stacy did not take notes. Tom? Right.
So, I
Oh.
definitely like the idea of postponing it. There's a lot of questions here. How much time
Right. that's
do
a-
you
right.
need to kind of research and put together some options? I don't want to jump at
No, I
something
think,
really quick where you're not ready.
well, I'm gonna drive over to the school when we're done and take some pictures. But secondly, I think probably our capital project manager has those details relatively available. The only question would be if we needed Georgia Power to run a new photometric
Probably we will.
survey to lessen it. That might delay it slightly. It's not a very obtrusive process to put the poles in, and that can be done at a later date. But
Okay.
we'd also like to be able to wrap this up so that section is completed, including lighting, as close to the construction as
Get to the
possible.
middle of- Okay, so
June meeting?
I don't know if
Well,
that answers. I don't know if that answers.
Michael, Todd, do you want, because I guess we can't just say postponed indefinitely,
We need a date. I would look at that July 8th date.
July?
Because we
But
have.
they
a
want
meeting
it,
in
they
June.
want it to be finished. They want to
I don't
work
know
on
if we
it
can-
during.
That's not, that's maybe not necessary to have it done by I think
The
July
worst thing
8th.
is we put it on an agenda and they're not ready, we just postpone it again. Is that right? Does it,
Postpone it. If you table, it won't come up until you've untabled.
well, let's just table it then, and then we can
That's
remove
fair.
it from the table.
Just one question in the short term, because obviously we're trying to get all of this completed before school gets back in. I mean, so if we're running up to a point, could we cut the conduit in the ground so that if it, you know, it could be run at a later date if that's necessary, so that we don't have to go back and tear up stuff after we've already put it in or anything?
They'll actually be boring, because of and we've already got conduit at the driveways, which were part of the phase one construction. So there should be minimal impact. It would just be, obviously, they'd have crews out there to be able to do the installation, probably over probably about a 1 to 2 week process at some point in the future.
Okay, just, I know it's a lot easier to put the conduit in the ground while we're doing the work rather than have to go back and bore or tear up or anything like that.
Okay. All right, so I need a motion to table it. Oh,
One
sorry.
more, just one more comment, then I'll make a motion. Just, you have a typo in your summary. You referenced the Winter's Chapel path, so it's a cut and paste error. So just.
Sharon, just for, Madam Mayor, can I ask Sharon something?
Certainly.
Sharon, for purposes, if this item is tabled, it won't appear on the agenda until it's just brought up on the floor. Is that correct? Where if it
Oh,
was
no, that won't
postponed
work.
to a date certain, it would appear on the agenda. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so that actually won't work. We have to postpone to the table because we want we want it in our packet.
So when is our June 10th is our, so.
June 8th.
June,
No, it's not. 8th is a Saturday.
so it'd be
June 10th.
But
And that doesn't overlap,
Michael just put a bug in my ear. Just, we'd like to be ready to present at the next one if possible.
Okay, so right, May 20th, which is where Stacy said, like, May 28th. She
All right.
was there a while ago.
I move that we postpone item number 11, approval of a lighting services agreement with Georgia Power for the Vermac path to our June.
No, May 20th.
May 28th,
Yes, it's,
for our May 28th meeting.
Second.
thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none. I call a vote on the motion to postpone. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We will see you again
Thank you.
next. Michael, next meeting.
Oh, do I have an old patent on here? Or I must have downloaded me. Right there.
The next item on the agenda is approval of SS4A implementation grant application for North Peachtree Road, Michael Smith.
Yes, Jonathan mentioned this, Jonathan DeJoya mentioned this at the last meeting as part of his report on the Safe Streets program. We've been working on applying for a federal grant. This would be for implementation of a project, and the project we have identified is the proposed path and wider sidewalks on North Peachtree Road from Cotillion up to Brook Run Park. Couple of reasons this project was identified as maybe a good fit for this one, the whole safe routes to school aspect. The path is identified in our trail plan, and one of the factors they will look at is disadvantaged communities, and so we do have a lot of kids, and that census tract is identified as one of our more disadvantaged census tracts, and a lot of those kids walk to school in that area. So the project is to do the path on the west side of the road where the schools are, and do a wider sidewalk on the east side. The sidewalk, most of that sidewalk's older, and I think it's 4 feet wide in a lot of places. And some places you have little landscape walls right beside it, so it feels pretty narrow. The rough cost we've put together for that is 19.75 million. It would require a 20% local match, which would be 3.95 million. We have 750,000 in ARPA funds for Safe Streets implementation that has not been spent yet, that could be applied to this. But if we were successful in getting this grant, we would have to probably move some things around in our capital plan to fully fund this match. But that should be doable, because with it being federal funds, you know, we may not hear whether we get the grant for 6 or 8 months possibly, and then it'll probably be a 5-year implementation to get from design to construction. So This is before you because of the deadline for the grant, and there's just some forms that the mayor will need to sign and acknowledging that we're providing the local match.
John, your question?
First, Michael, thank you for the conversation or for raising this issue. At the last meeting, I mentioned and asked Jonathan if there was any study done on numbers of children who would walk on the east side versus the west side. He said that really hasn't been done. I believe there's a lot of children on the east side that would walk and use those sidewalks, especially because the complex is there and all the streets from the neighborhood that feed into North Peachtree. There's very few. There's a small little unit apartments on the west side, but for the most part, most children, in my opinion, are on the east side. You just mentioned that the trail would be on the west side, but you also mentioned something on the east side. Are you saying that you wanted to redo sidewalks between Cotillion and Brook Run Park to our average sidewalk 6-foot width included in this project? Explain that, please.
Yes, that's the plan. Certainly up to the signal at Peachtree Middle. Yes, we're talking about replacing the existing 4-foot sidewalk with a 6-foot sidewalk on that side, at least up to Peachtree Middle. Whether it needs to go all the way up to Brook Run or not, that can be decided later, but from the safe routes to school aspect, that's what we were looking at.
Well, kudos for bringing that aspect of the project together, because to me, what's on North Peachtree right now is inadequate. It might be concrete of 4 feet with it might be 4 feet with overgrown into the 3 feet level. I mean, it is really thin, and you're talking about, 4th grade boys walking to school together, goofing around. It's a dangerous route to walk. I'm hopeful that there's going to be a little bit of a buffer and 6 feet. I'd love to see the engineering. I want to see more. I like what you're saying as far as the trail. The underserved community is on the east side. I'm not sure if you're expecting them to cross onto the trail directly over there. Will there be a crossing guard there for those maybe 100 children that live in that complex? I'm not sure of the feasibility of the trail serving that community or not. But again, your addition of, explain, it will be 6 feet, which is the minimum width currently.
Yes.
All right, so a 6-foot sidewalk on the east side of North Peachtree. Kudos. I love that that's being part of the project, and happy to see more. Thank you.
So go ahead. Tom.
All right. Yeah, no, just while we have the opportunity while we're discussing this project, I brought this up before, but I don't know what, we haven't even applied for the grant, let alone won it. So, but when we get to design, excuse me, one of the things I'd like to make sure that we look at is, to John's point, a lot of the students walking from the Dunwoody Village apartment complex, in my opinion, and there might be engineering involved that I'm not aware of, the 4 lanes at North Peachtree down at that section is not necessary. I would say, especially north of the Dunwoody Village apartments, I think it should be 1 lane in each direction. You're narrowing the width of the road that students might have to cross if in fact there are crossing there, and you could put a substantial crossing at that location. You could also take away the additional lane that goes basically along the church and in front of North Forest Trail, the condos there, and use that space more effectively, narrow the road, slow down the speeds through that double school zone and park zone and 3 churches. So I would like to explore that. I don't know if you could do it the whole way down, maybe south of Dunwoody Village Apartments. The additional lanes are necessary for merging onto Cotillion and on and off of the interstate, but north of that traffic light, I would love to see just 1 lane in each direction. And that gives us a lot of extra right of way to play with for putting in these additional pedestrian infrastructure. So I just want to point that out. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, from the aspect of narrowing the road, we will likely look at both to narrow the road and to minimize any right of way and easements. We'll probably look at moving the curb and taking out the bike lane through a lot of this area. I mean, not saying that we are going to do that, but that definitely will be a consideration, I think.
Okay, Joe.
Just gonna move to approve if we have that.
Okay, John, well,
One little comment, just as far as narrowing south of the Dunwoody Village Apartments. That's also Dunwoody Baptist, and those lanes get used heavily at church exit time. So just be careful of that. Well, okay, yeah, north, again, there's still a lot of traffic. I agree with you.
Right,
All I'm saying is
right there.
look at it from every perspective possible.
Joe,
Deadline's this Thursday, right, Michael, to submit? It's
just
the,
make the
I
motion.
believe so, yeah.
that's the 19th, so I'm moving to approve. Thank you.
Second.
Moved by Joe, second by Tom. I have one last question / concern. So we think we'll hear about this in the next, we don't know.
6 months.
So I don't know if it'll be like, because this goes directly to US DOT as opposed to our
Yeah,
senators. Okay.
That's right.
Because with the senators, we kind of got feedback. We could tell kind of what they were thinking of what we submitted by the questions they were asking their offices. So if this fails, we have got to figure out a way to fix that sidewalk on the, I don't know what side, but the other side of the school across the street. We've got to figure out a way to fix it. I don't know how we'll pay for it. I don't know where it falls on a priority list. I'm not trying to jump the list. Maybe SPOS revenues will come in higher and we'll have some excess funds, but it is not 4 feet. It's 2.5 feet, maybe generously. A baby stroller barely fits. So something to keep in mind. Okay. Active motion on the floor. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I call the question. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. Thank you, Michael. Rachel is up next for the Waterford Park playground equipment.
Much shorter than Michael. Good evening. I'm excited to bring this one to you guys tonight. We, as you know, Waterford Park has desperately needed a playground since we completed that a few years ago. We opened the proposals at the end of March. We received 5 back, lots of heavy hitters out there. Myself and 2 other members on staff scored the 5 proposals received. Bliss Products scored the highest. We felt that their attention to what we needed for both play and non-play structures, their all-inclusive features that they're offering in the design set. And I've spoken to all of their references listed and everyone speaks very highly of them. A lot of my counterparts in other agencies said you'll never regret going with Bliss. So we feel very confident that they'll be able to deliver what we're looking for at Waterford Park. So tonight I'm requesting that we look at the contract award for Bliss Products, including the 10% contingency. That would be for $164,460. And that would still leave us about $58,000 left in the Waterford Park general CIP project for potential, maybe some trail connections later on the line. So we do have a little bit of buffer in case you wanted to add some other amenities later. But let me know if you have any questions. Their proposed design is in your packet. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have questions, Tom?
No, just comment. I know this has been eagerly anticipated. I know the neighborhood's excited that this is coming. I know I read through the package about a 12-week lead time for the equipment to be ordered. So I don't want to put anybody on the spot for dates, but hopefully we're looking at possibly by year end.
Yeah.
Having this in. Okay, great. And I know there was a lot of color scheme packets in there. Is that something that you will decide or how will that be decided?
Funny, I actually brought those. I thought you might ask that. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously a couple favorites that we have. What's in your packet for what they included as design is just, I mean, that obviously doesn't have to look like that. What we're thinking is some of the like the blues and greens and grays, more of a subdued. I mean, this is tucked in a neighborhood. This is not Two Bridges Park. We understand, it doesn't need to be anything loud. But that's kind of the color scheme we're going for, unless of course there's stronger opinion. Happy to take that into account.
That's not our business, unless somebody has a strong opinion. Catherine, you have a question?
Yes, but not a color question.
Okay.
I'll just mention that Rob and I did a nearly unscientific survey of K through 5 and at Dunwoody Elementary School, and they were very pro swing. Very pro swing, even, the span K and 5. So surprised us, but delighted to see that in there. So when I did look at this, it had a wheelchair symbol and I thought for a second it meant wheelchair access, but it means in this instance, crawling access, right? They just get to use their hands because they can get them in the big holes. That's what this is offering.
So part of the play structure itself is what you're looking at, the size of the holes and things. That's part of the all-inclusive component. But specifically, they have what's called a transfer point, which means a parent or guardian could help a child in a wheelchair to certain aspects of the playground. But then there's also, I believe, 3 or 4 specifically that the child could still play with while being in a wheelchair. That's what that scoring on that top right is that what you're looking at, where it's required versus what they're including.
The schematic shows the
Mhm.
wheelchair symbol at the place where it looks like it's a landing that somebody could,
That's what they call the transfer station.
right?
Yep. And then
Okay.
there's other components
crawl from there.
throughout the, yeah.
Okay, okay, I got overly excited about wheelchairs for a second, but I see what you're going for. Okay, thank you.
I just, from my unscientific sample of second graders over the last few years, which led to a lot of the bigger kid equipment, I think at Two Bridges. Is this challenging enough for a 3rd or 4th or 5th grader, this equipment?
So it's designed for really 2 groups, a 2 to 5 and like a 5 to 12.
Okay, okay. And then if we have, is there no room for a 3rd swing?
There could be, that was just what they wanted to leave sort of an open footprint to accommodate just.
And I know,
just a
I
little bit
always
open
tell the
space.
children, when I talk to them,
Mhm.
that the reason you don't have more swings is they take up an extraordinary amount of room. And then we talk about why they take up an extraordinary amount of room, because they have to go forward and they have to go back. And so they always find that really interesting and disappointing. Okay, all right, this can be consent?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, thank you. We will see it on consent at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, John, I didn't see your hand.
It's okay. Tell me about the flooring.
Oh, and I got
The
the
this cushioning, is that going to be included or no?
Talking about the playground surfacing, it's called PAP, it's a pour in place.
There you go, pouring place. yeah.
Yep, and it's similar to what we have at our other parks. It's the same company.
And that's part of this as well.
Yep, it's one of their subs, yep.
Okay, that works. I just want to make sure that's there. And I know the shades are there. That's good. It's all good. Thank you.
Oh, shade structure or no?
Not out of the gate. That's something that we can look at. It's still very heavily wooded
Okay, because
over
I can't
there.
tell from the
So we'll see,
illustration.
once everything's in, we'll be able to tell if
Okay.
that, we can add that later. Yep.
All right, thank you. We'll see this on consent.
Thank you.
All right, Nicole.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Ginger is joining us on Zoom tonight for this item.
Okay.
After we have done some further review of the technology contract, we are recommending that we do a conversion of a few more positions in the GIS space this time. We currently have 3 positions under contract in GIS. We have a full-time analyst, a full-time technician, and a part-time manager. So the manager devotes about 1 day a week to Dunwoody work. We're recommending that we bring GIS in-house, but in doing so that we make the manager a full-time position for the city. Bring the analyst in also as full-time. And by bringing in the 2 more senior skill sets full-time, we actually wouldn't need a 3rd position. So we've looked at some numbers. We are projecting that the cost to this, there would be a small cost to the city, $14,000 for the first year, which includes salary and benefits. If council approves of this, we would work with the consulting firm to come up with an agreed upon date for the transition. And it would be paid for through general funds, so you'd see a budget amendment coming forward in the future.
Okay.
And Ginger, and I'll take any questions you have.
Questions? Tom?
Yeah, thank you. And, so I like the idea of bringing some of these positions in-house and giving people the opportunity for advancement, but also being more part of the city. So I favor that. My question is, one of the reasons IT was the last one, or, to be brought in, was the flexibility in case there's an emergency or a crisis that, through our contract, we can mobilize additional resources to make sure that our service isn't interrupted, especially since, a lot of our police services are technology oriented. you know, this is not just convenience, it's public safety as well. So are we, what, well, I guess what's the plan for that? Are we prepared for those types of situations? Will we have a contract in place for if we need to call in additional resources? How is that all going to be handled moving forward?
So I don't know if Ginger wants to answer this or if she wants me to. This would still leave security contract with Intertiv. And we don't plan to bring that in-house. So that's very important because we have enough for day-to-day security support right now. But as you know, we've had some security events in the past. And if we need to, we can ramp, you know, the contract can ramp that up where we couldn't if we brought that in-house. We couldn't be as responsive. So we have no plans to bring security in-house. And I don't know if Ginger-
Yes, I'm online. I'm sorry. Hello. Yes, so exactly what Nicole is saying. We still would have the contract in place for certain escalation points if we needed it. And that would even include potentially, you know, like a GIS, we'd be able to reach out if we didn't end up needing a fill-in position or extra spot or something like that. We still have that relationship and everything with the vendor.
Anybody else?
I just want to add,
Oh, Rob.
this is an observation I had. These are GIS positions, so this is more like data mapping, not IT security that we're bringing in-house. So, sorry, I jumped in without looking over the line. I'm with Tom. I like the idea if we've got skilled folks of bringing them on and having them be city employees so we can keep them.
I'm not sure if I'm fully on board. These are skilled positions, yes, but they are task positions. And I guess I'm looking at the GIS that I'm seeing. I see some things on the web, and I'm sure the staff uses things behind the scenes more than the public does. I'm just trying to understand the benefit aspect. We don't get a whole lot of information from GIS. They don't come to us very often. I know there's stuff there. I'm just looking at the benefit. It's $14,000 a year. And I want to make sure that it's, for example, you keep saying we're getting the staff. I know that our GIS manager that works in 3 different cities, I can't ask whether he's the one coming to us. I know he's very skilled and very good. But that being said, it's probably inappropriate for me to ask that. Does that make sense? But I'm trying to understand the give and take of what we're getting. We're getting services for money, and GIS services are relatively everywhere. It's not like the security that needs to be behind a firewall. These are just things that we're paying for. So I'm trying to understand the benefit of bringing these in besides whatever else you can tell me.
I think Ginger is ready to speak to this one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So the city is getting more and more GIS heavy with every new application that we're adding. So if you look at Central Square, the new ComDev app, that's pretty GIS heavy. The Central Square for the police department is really GIS heavy. And we're moving towards next generation 911, which is extremely GIS heavy because that's what actually routes the calls and things like that. And so GIS is becoming more and more a part of all of the parts and pieces that are making things work behind the scenes, in addition to things like, you know, the trees and pavement and all the other day-to-day type requests that you'll see from the GIS department.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with that whole aspect. I'm just looking at it from you're telling us that you need more GIS services and that the $14,000 additional cost would bring this person on, 2 people full-time. You would have the right skills and the right people to fill a city position, and it would be done at that point.
Correct. So we'd be transitioning 2.25 positions into 2 positions, but the difference is currently we have the quarter position, the person that's there, you know, just 1 day a week is the GIS manager. And instead of only having that skill set, that higher level of abilities 1 day a week, we would have that person 5 days a week. And so that would be a huge benefit to the city because there's a lot of things that someone at that skill set would be capable of doing that the GIS technician position, for example, would not be as able to do because they're more of a task-based type request and response.
All right, thank you. Again, I can't ask for names, so thank you.
Joe.
I'm sort of on the fence for this as well. And I'll just kind of play the devil's advocate potentially for, let's say, let's fast forward to next year's council retreat. If staff has a forecast of ideas of personnel changes that they want to do, let's add that to the agenda item for a retreat. Number one. Number two, Ginger, we're not IT specialists. I don't understand the topography of all the applications we have. When you say Central Square, I don't know if anyone knows what that means, or new 911, so on and so forth. So potentially, I know this is a discussion and I know you have the job description, but if we could dumb it down even further, if you bring this up again, and say a day in the life. So I'm a GIS this is what I do, and these are the things I've been working on the last week or month or two. So we just kind of get a gist of what they really do and what value they're adding. Just so we kind of get that. Here's our workload, here's our capacity, this is the value benefit that we do. That would definitely help. And then from the cost, does the cost also include, for instance, we take people and we fly them over across the country, we fly them to seminars. Does it include professional development, education? Does that cost also include those opportunities?
That would be done through the technology budget. This is just salary and benefits.
Right. So I guess we'd have to accommodate that. I'd like to see what that's accommodated for. And then I really do look at, I get the tribal knowledge. I like bringing in people that have the leadership roles for the longevity of the continuity of operations. But when I think of career development and succession planning, if we have a two-person team, the manager, where do they go? They would just leave and go somewhere else. Maybe the person under them might look to be a manager, or they gonna go jump around, work in these multiple cities because they see they're learning new things of how everybody does, and they're in this collective of understanding what municipalities are doing, and they're bringing best practices to the table. So I'm kind of on the fence with this one.
Yeah, I'm a little ambivalent about this one, but probably because I don't understand enough about it. I think we have not prepared, usually we have some information that hits us, like some inkling stuff is coming, or at least I do. Also, I'm concerned in our current budget climate that we might want to be careful obligating dollars, that we just aren't exactly sure what the future holds. So one of the benefits of the contracting model is that as our workload decreases or increases, the contractor can scale up or down. I don't know if that's different in IT, but I think it's kind of the same. Plus, I think GIS is really more community development. I don't even really know. It kind of mushes into both. And if there's a significant policing component to GIS, then it should be coming out of their budget. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at this. I do not think we're ready to vote on this in a few weeks. I think, Eric, you need to come back to us with, I think people have enough questions. I don't know if there's different feelings in the room, but at least come back in 2 weeks. We will not put it as a consent. But I'm a little kind of confused. And I'm not afraid to admit that, but again, I think that if there's a dollars and cents reason to do it, $14,000 is essentially the same as what we're spending, right, in our budget. It's just that what if development ceases or something, and then the workload drops significantly, then what happens? Whereas right now, we can negotiate with our contract partners to figure things out. It's not saying no, we're just not saying yes right now. So is that okay with everybody? Bring it back.
Okay.
Better fleshed out. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, John, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I agree wholeheartedly with you. Again, when Ginger mentioned the advanced 911, so basically
Right.
you could text 911 on your cell phone and your phone, and everybody would show you where you're at. And there is a big police segment coming.
Yes.
I would love to have a presentation from GIS, where they're at now and what they could do, and then bring this back to us. I think staff is bringing this to us because they believe it's in our best interest to look at it closely.
Right.
So I do want to hear from
Yes.
them. I want to hear the why. They just need to explain the why a little bit better, but I'd love to see this come in front of us again. But I also want them to tell us the benefits of the GIS system, where it is now and where it's going.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next, Mr. Vinicki.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we're going to do a little bit of a recap from the retreat from the other month. One of the things we did last year was we decided that it would be a good thing to come back formally to council, maybe about 6 or 7 weeks after the retreat, and go through deliverables and the directives that happened. And what I'd like to do is spend just a few minutes on that and discussion and questions and follow-up. Are we up on there, Sharon? Make sure it's up there. Okay. First off, one of the things from the retreat that we kind of tweaked this year was we discussed it in two different things. Instead of just deliverables, we also said one of the things that council's giving at the retreat is direction, informal direction. One of the few times you get to spend long time discussing the way things go. It's not necessarily something you would vote on at a council meeting, but it's something that staff needs to hear collectively from the group. So in all these categories, you're going to see two different things. Deliverables, which are a hard thing, a project, something to be completed, a due date. Some is direction, which is just changing the way we're doing something or highlighting the way we're doing something. So we'll start off with first some things with city council. First one on here has already been completed. One of the things that was asked for was a pre-list of agenda items. Usually get it on the Wednesday before the council meeting. You'll get it earlier, just as the list, the supporting documentation is not generally finished at that time. And we started doing that with the very first meeting that we came back from. Second one, add updates as needed for the capital projects to the monthly city manager report in lieu of creating formal presentations at the request of one council members. We ended up having a lot of different items that would come up. Oh, can we add this, add this? And that's one of the reasons we rebooted the report. We had gotten to the point of some staff members had forgotten why things had gotten added. So what we're doing is we're kind of looking at it that way, and we're going to start handling it a little bit differently. And also one of the other things, and Eric mentioned this earlier, is we started off with internal quarterly review capital meetings. It's not just capital as in building projects, but it's things that council has talked about that rises to the top and needs to be discussed internally. So we're kind of changing our internal procedures on that based off the council's retreat and feedback from it. First one under communications is direction. As individual council members determine desire to help develop a template for district town halls. You discuss it informally. Dunwoody is a small city. It's not, may not be needed, but Jennifer and her staff are more than willing to help whenever you're ready to pull the trigger. Deliverable, creating messaging program to assist citizens in interacting with E911. What's ironic is the volunteer organization I work with actually has this exact same thing that they rolled out like a week after we were through with this. However, communications and police are going to work on delivering this to you this summer, something that can be presented to the public. When you call, what do you say? How do you say? What do you not say? This is a new grouping that I'm calling on here. I made it up and everybody kind of gave me the little eyeball test, like what is beautification? Yes, I stole it from previous jurisdiction. But in this case, some of the things we discussed at the retreat didn't fall neatly into a department. And the first one is a deliverable on this. Develop options available to the city in right-of-way to beautify commercial corridors and review for inclusion in the 2025 budget. This is Public Works, Park, Economic Development. We've had a few internal discussions on how to work with this, and we plan to bring something to you in conjunction with the 2025 budget proposal. It won't be large. These are simple things that can be done. We actually, as a city, already do a lot of it informally. We just don't talk about it that way. So we'll start looking at that as a proposal within next year's budget. Next one was an immediate deliverable, increase sign sweeps for code enforcement. Occasionally, you know, when it rains, it pours, they start growing like weeds. It happens in every jurisdiction. And sometimes you just got to say, start cleaning them up again. Next up, community development. First deliverable, it will be done this summer, is review the current film codes and report back to council should there be needs or changes or amendments to it. It's one of those things that we discuss. Staff will go back, check on it. Right now, staff has looked once. They're going to do a second or third look before they actually present and bring something back to you. We don't think there'll be much needed change to anything on it, but it's something that should be reviewed, especially in light of changing times. Next one is many things during the council meeting or during the retreat came up about the Unified Development Code, the UDC that's coming up. Things to be included, sustainability, housing, crime prevention by design. The list on this slide is small compared to the list that was talked about during it. And a lot of that is going to be done over the next months while the UDC is being modified. We even come across some that the train was starting to leave the station during the spring, we're going to say, you know, it needs to be wrapped into it. But this is one of those things, if there's anything else that you want to make sure is included, you know who the staff is to reach out to Eric, myself, Richard, any of us. Next up, compensation was one of the topics. One of the deliverables was already approved by council, 4.25% compensation adjustment, which went into effect on the May payroll that will start May 30th. That's already been approved. The second one will be done later, probably end of third quarter, beginning of fourth quarter, and start looking at options, feasibility, and the cost of providing post-employment benefits. It's one of those things that every year we always need to be active in looking at. It's not saying it's the situation can be solved by this, but you don't need to not look at additional options. Economic development. The first one is direction, but I think it's one that staff felt very good that they were already working on it as developers approach the city, bring council members in as appropriate to solicit feedback. It's one of those things, as we say, try to message it to ourselves to make sure we include it as we go through discussions. And also the reverse is generally true. When developers approach y'all, you'll come to staff. So the communication lines are there open. It's just one of those things somewhat codified in presenting it this way. The other one pulled together a document that shows how Dunwoody is differentiated from other jurisdictions in its economic appeal. Michael Starling's going to work on this with his quarterly presentations, but it's one of those things we do differ in what we do have, what we offer, what we cannot offer. I mean, it's every jurisdiction is different on that, but having it presented is one of the desires of council. Next one, review current incentive programs available for businesses in the city and report back should there need to be changes to it. This is one that Michael Starling is going to work with the Development Authority on getting it back to you in probably third or fourth quarter of this year. Last deliverable with economic development is develop a time frame for regular trends and insights to be presented, and the first of those was today. We originally said April 29th, but sometimes you do the timing on this and you're off by a week. Oh, the other one, sorry, there was one more. Review possibilities of Jet Ferry and Winter Chapel development plans. Walkabout was done in April, just before. Council could approve any incentives in there and start working on a joint council development authority planning commission meeting probably third quarter of this year. Turning to finance, one of them is create a multi-year timeline for review and rewrite of all city financial policies. City adopted a great many of them upon its inception. Like all good things, you just need to look at them every once in a while. So finance staff is working on first a timeline. It's not something that can be done quickly, and you don't want to do it inaccurately. So they're going to come up with a timeline that will present closer towards the end of this year.
You're a typo.
2023, 2024, I'm off by one. Actually was thinking in advance. Anyway, but we'll start working on that timeline. Next deliverable, review and improve the pro forma general fund model. Okay, Richard Plato went through that partly on the last meeting with adjusting revenues earlier, and after this presentation, he and I will talk about how we're updating the pro forma, the forecast, and how we're incorporating that and the issues that were caused previously by this change that we're tweaking in it. Last one on this slide is the direction, the reincorporation of City 101. We heard that and we kind of thought the best avenue for it is as we present the budget this year is to kind of roll it out in that way. There's lots of people, those of us that work in government, we hear it, we see it every day, but citizens, they have their day jobs that to them, it's a service that's out there. So we do want to kind of up the game a little bit on the way we present the budget. So we're going to plan on doing the City 101, what really happens, what works and how through the budget process. Going to parks, first one up there, deliverable. I talked about this earlier today, install playground and trails at Waterford. Playground approved at the May 13th, it was discussed, and the trail research is ongoing. The second deliverable, install restrooms at Homecoming and Wildcat Parks. The third one, we're looking at the Veterans Memorial options, reporting back to council on that. The first on this slide is using the tracker data. We've got that, and it's actually become kind of a neat thing for us to start looking at how many people go from place to place. And I still think the most fascinating thing is, other than work at home, people at City Hall, the next likely place they go to is QT. Just in case you didn't know, we proved it as an actual fact. It's number 3 on the list.
I assume that captures the police department. They have to gas their cars.
I think it captures all of staff. Next one is Rachel Waldron's already worked with y'all on this, is making sure that your calendars have major events through Outlook. On the police, we are working internally and externally with the council meeting, and Eric may want to update a little bit more on this at looking at reopening the Region 3 zone. And the next one is, this is one that will be incorporated. Last year, we started working on trying to work on a nuisance ordinance, and there have been issues with it. And part of it has been that the cab model has not yet seen fruition. It has some legal struggles with it. So what we're going to work with, yes, ma'am?
It's irrelevant.
Okay,
They
yeah,
stuck
okay,
language in a state law that the governor
Okay.
signed last week that says we can't do it.
So part of this though is,
Mhm.
the police department has worked with some places that are voluntary on it, that we can work with the real-time crime center. So it's going to be incorporated through that process. Next up, update of the road safety action plan that was done earlier. On trails, one of the things was direction of the council, and that was prioritize the perimeter area trail development in coordination with PCID, and that's ongoing. We will be working later on a formal update on the Ashford Dunwoody Trail progress. And one of them that was direction, and this is a firm direction that was discussed at the retreat, was approach all trail projects with the focus of softening the impact to affected property. And that's one of the things that is a valuable thing to hear and discuss as a group. Next on public works, a direction one, promoting stormwater efforts in all public works projects. This is one of those that we kind of even have internally every time we say something, make sure you put the stormwater portion in it because it is a large portion of a great deal of our projects. And that's a very quick recap. We plan to come back to you later in the year on this, but we just wanted to open it up, and we also had sent it to y'all before the agenda was released so that you knew what was on there. And it's all the things, as we said, that got written on paper or discussed out loud during it, kind of summarized, kind of boiled down into a more digestible form. With that, if there's any questions or comments.
Questions? Thank you for doing this. Anybody have questions? Joe?
So, yeah, a couple, on the beautification one, you mentioned, potentially being something to be addressed in the 2025 budget. I wanted to, from the retreat, what I think and what is written down, two different things, was that we would be given a spectrum of options for funding options. So it's like, what is the art of the possible versus
Okay,
having it in the
this
budget?
case, what staff walked away from and what we heard because we regrouped and talked about it together was the desire to make sure that there is some commitment to beautification in the places that we can do it. I always like to say it's the park bench that needs to be there and look a little bit better than a piece of wood. And some of it has been that staff themselves have done it somewhat disjointed. Parks might do something here, public work. We needed to talk about it internally, put a small amount of funding to see where it goes. Now, the input on what is actually done, we still need from council on things you would like to see. But the discussion of this is to come up with options to show to council as part of the budget process that these are things that you can do.
So maybe I'll leave it up to the mayor to potentially have a separate discussion on that subject then, because it's really about, it could be public-private partnership, because like on Canton Street in Roswell, that's done by the merchants, the hanging flower baskets done by their merchants association.
So there's some of those conversations ongoing. So I know that, I believe Rosemary has worked with the merchants in Dunwoody Village to get some holiday lights put up this year. I think they've agreed to some, but that's tentative and could be misheard or misremembered. So I think that we can look at, why don't you send me via email what you think this discussion should be, so then we can format a discussion at a future council meeting about it.
Thanks. And then the second question, I have three, was under compensation, you mentioned post-employee benefits. What does that mean?
Retiree benefits. So in some cases, right now, there are none offered by the city. And in some jurisdictions, there are post-employee benefits, post-employment benefits.
A retention tool for police officers.
Post-employee, okay. And then the trails, you mentioned the Ashford
Right.
Dunwoody. I do recall we mentioned Mount Vernon was a priority as well. I mean, do we have that anywhere?
It's not being ignored, but it was very much heard that Ashford Dunwoody should be the priority. That was what staff walked away from.
Right, thanks.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just had a quick question on the tracking app. Well, yeah, my microphone's kind of, it's kind of janky. So, because I know that's how we use the tracking app to do the count for Lemonade Days.
Yes.
How drilled down can it go? I'm just curious. For example, would we be able to use a tracking app to find out how many people actually use a Winter's Chapel path? can we use a tracking app to find out people how many use the Waterford Park at
Where they
noon
come
on a
from.
Wednesday?
We can get into that type of use with it. We've had two formal training sessions with the
Okay.
firm, and they're doing it every 2 weeks with us. And I do think it's powerful to do that. And like one of the ones that I've even tried to construct myself is the 4th of July parade route. And where do you go after that? We've got to learn how to use it, but yes, that type of information will definitely be retrievable and valuable for us.
So once we are kind of like further along with the usage of it, I mean, I would love like an update, like, you know.
That is definitely
Yeah,
planned.
cool.
Anybody else? Thank you for this. I appreciate it. Looks good. Send feedback, guys, if y'all have any. All right, next up is you and Richard.
And this will be a different type of general fund update than you've
Oh.
seen before. Yep.
Can I'll do it after. Go ahead. No, I just have something to tell council, but I'll do it after. Keep going. Right. Sorry.
Okay. First off, we've talked over one of the things is over the past 5 years, improving the financial bandwidth, as I call it, not improve the finances of the city, but improve the way we're doing things. And some of the things that council has focused on have been the steps you needed to do as a growing city. One of them was actually adopt the CIP. You had capital plans on a shelf, but you actually have something you can point to and say, this is funding. This is a funded 5-year program. Not everything's in it. Beforehand, it was, oh, these are things we would like to fund. One of the other things we started doing was looking at just internal procedures, and between Linda and Richard, there have been so many that have been straightened out and cleaned up. It's a great thing. The team there is really clicking. One of the other things we started looking at was capital prioritization. We went through many meetings of looking at all the capital projects that this city had talked about. One of the things we're doing now is doing a little bit of tweaking on the forecast that we do internally. And some of it is going to be a little bit of 101 on timing of revenues tonight. So with that, I'm going to go first through the 3-step process we plan to do with this. The first one was 2 weeks ago when Richard and his team updated the general fund revenues. Okay. Now, one of the things you're going to see in tonight's presentation is that we adopt a budget in October, but we receive about 1/3 of the revenue after that adoption. So we're actually basing the adoption on an older number, and we've always adjusted it later on. We've moved that adjustment up to as soon as we could, which is always going to end up being in the March or April timeframe, because we've got to wait for certain checks to come from certain entities like Georgia Power, who always pay us on February 28th of the next year. So we do have to work on using those. So what we're doing is incorporating that in the forecast, and we want to talk a little bit about how that influences revenue. Part 2 is what you're going to see tonight. We're going to talk about that forecast that we've shown in the past and talk about how we've changed the revenue. And we want to specifically talk about the trends that all of them have seen in the post-COVID economy. Then the third one, which may not be at the next council meeting, but may be a later one, is talking about things and unmet needs of the city. So that's a longer discussion. So part of this is just to talk about tonight, the base budget and where revenues are trending and where base expenditures, not new expenditures, but base expenditures are going. And with that, I'll let Richard give some of the background.
Good evening. So as Jay mentioned, I'm going to kind of go through the first couple of slides here and talk about historical, whether it's recent or even from the time the city was founded to today. Kind of talk about revenue mainly as the focus. Jay will get into some of the expenditure side, but we'll also talk about a little bit of expenditures as well. So the slide before you right now is the general fund history for the last 4 years, 2019 to 2023. 2023 is unaudited, but the others are actual. So this is not the budget. This is the actual that was reported in our financial statements. And it's really focusing on those recurring revenues. So we've stripped out any one-time revenue items and expense items as well. What you see is revenue that, generally speaking, is relatively flat around that $30 million mark, again, just for the general fund. Which is what we talked about. This slide was also presented during the 2024 budget. If you recall, we've kind of seen revenue grow at about 2.5% year over year, and that's what we factored in into the budget for 2024. However, expenses have gone from 25 million, and now we're pushing $30 million. A lot of that is inflationary related. You have raises in there, obviously. We're seeing contract escalations and raises as well. So we're really seeing, we have not had to use fund balance before, use of reserves, I should say, or anything. We have not, revenues always exceeded expenditures each year. But that line's getting closer. As you can tell, 2023, they're getting very close compared to 2021, for instance. So this slide is to show we have not used fund balance, we have not used reserves, but the lines are getting closer and closer. The next slide, so this shows, again, only focusing on general fund revenue and the totals that are in the budget. And we'll talk a little bit about timing here because there is an interesting fact, and Jay brought this up. 33% of our revenue is one time, we get at one point during the year. It's not evenly spread throughout the year. 3 of them, property taxes. That's roughly October, generally speaking, into September, and a November 1st is the due date for property taxes. So we get those revenues in the fall. Franchise fees, that's the Georgia Power. The bulk of that's a Georgia Power. We get that as a one-time check in February. And then insurance premium tax is another 12% of our revenue. That's also a one-time item that we get in October. So yes, we have now adjusted the budget at the last meeting to equal what our 2023 actuals were. We don't get a lot of visibility to those until they actually hit our bank account. So factoring in any changes or anything like that can be challenging. But what this donut does show is that 38% property, when we say taxes, that's property taxes. 8% business license, 12% insurance premium, and 11% franchise fees. That's more than half of what your revenue sources come from. And of that amount, we just get those one time a year. So that again is just on a high level, talking about general fund revenue, how much it is, and the sources basically. And those are the categories, I believe there's 15 on there. Those are the large categories that we really focus on when we're reporting revenue to both internally as I presented and externally as well. The next one, and this is another one I know that you've seen as well, but this is the tax digest growth since inception, basically. Most years positive. There are a couple of negative years in there that can be explained, whether it's results of lawsuits or pandemic, for example, or something like that. You looked like the last 3 years, 2021 to 2023, we've had 3 years in a row of what I would call fairly good growth. And it's not the last time we've had kind of this trend was, I believe it's 2016 to 2018 with 2019 being 2.5%, and then we had a down year. So over time, over the long term, yes, our tax digest goes up. When you look year over year and try to forecast it, you can see some variability in it, meaning that there could be some down years. The first glimpse we'll get of the tax digest comes toward the end of this month when we get the preliminary assessments from the DeKalb Tax Commissioner's office. So we'll have a better view of this toward the end of this month, and we can report back then. And let's see here. Okay, so as you know, there's a 1 mil exemption plus a freeze in effect. So what this chart really shows is what that impact is having on our residential properties versus our commercial properties. So again, from inception to the 2023 tax digest, the top line is residential real. So the top line is the net digest growth. But if you focus on the 2 lines below that, so that's kind of, I guess, a gray line on my computer, hopefully yours as well. The orange line, I'll call it that, that's commercial real estate or commercial real value from about $1 billion, pushing $2.5 billion. Again, no exemptions, no freezes on that. The next line, the blue line below that, is the residential real tax digest value over the life since inception. Stayed right around $1 billion. Again, that's the impact of the 1 mil exemption and the freeze, showing more reliance on our commercial properties as the residential side of the equation has really stayed flat since inception. And I think that would be better shown on the next slide. This compares the tax values at 2010, and we chose 2010 because that's the first year we really got a full picture, included motor vehicles, included public utilities and things of that nature. So 2010 tax digest is on the left-hand side of the chart at the bottom. 2023 tax digest is on the right at the right-hand side there. And if you notice those columns, percentage changes, yes, residential real is up 69% over that time. Commercial is up even more, 115%. However, if you look at the second to bottom, the M&O exemptions, that's your mill, that's your freeze as well, 1 mil exemption in your freeze. That's up 143% from 658 million to 1.6 billion, basically washing out any gains we've seen in the residential real line. Again, that leads to that focus to the commercial. Commercial aspect has really been the only place since inception that we have seen growth in our tax digest. And so I think that sets us up. Oh, I do want to say one thing. If there were no exemptions, if we had been able to keep all the no mills, no exemptions or anything like no exemptions and no freezes or anything, the tax rate would be 2.132 mils to generate the equivalent amount of revenue that we're generating today. So just something to keep in the back of your mind as we go through the rest of it. And I think Jay takes it over from here. So I will turn it over to Jay.
You want me to try to get it? Okay. In what we did was we said.
Yeah,
I'll sit down.
Yeah. Yes. Same revenue, correct. Yes, the revenue that we're budgeting for in 2024, yes.
It's 3.04 now. You would take away a mill, it's 2.04 because we have a mill exemption. So it actually makes perfectly intuitive sense.
Yeah. Well, no freeze and no.
No, the freeze would stay so the thing is we have a 3.04 millage rate, but everyone who takes the homestead exemption gets a 1 mil exemption. So that really means effectively without any other exemptions, they're paying 2.04 mils on their property. Like that's what that's their real. So that would make sense that it's about that number because that's really what they're paying. It's not.
And just another point of clarification. Looking at the net digest and the exemptions thing, so that $1 billion with a B difference is the actual, that's the freeze. Is that a result of the freeze? So that's about 20% of unrealized growth in our tax digest over this time.
Exemptions and the freeze.
Yeah, okay. I mean, that's $1 billion is not insignificant.
It is significant, yes.
Just to follow up what Tom said, so if we didn't have that, so then you're saying what the net income would be generally speaking 20% more?
You could connect those dots, absolutely, yes.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I was.
Sure.
All right, Mr. Vinicki, I think you're back up again.
The why of showing this is we want to get into this discussion. We have it every few months because it's something that we need to keep our eye on. And that's what it is. It's watching, it's analyzing, it's making sure that things are understood. Let's get to those revenues that we talked about. Okay. The assumptions in the forecast break down into 6 categories now. We have 15 major revenue sources. I think technically we've probably got 50 maybe. Yeah, we probably got 50 individual sources of revenue, but you can categorize some of them together and get down to 15. Each of them will have their own 5-year projection and the behind the scenes mechanics in this. 5 of these categories, 1/3 of the budget over the next 5 years, have a growth of 0. Now that's not an alarming thing. So there's things we expect to have 0 unless things are adjusted. They're your business license amount. It's a pretty stable amount. It doesn't grow. Franchise fees, they kind of stay about at the same number when you start to look at it over the long term. Building permits are our most volatile revenue source. Hotel motel technically because of the pandemic. But if you start looking at it, our building permits because of large constructions like High Street go up for 2 years and then just plummet, okay? That is one of those things that when we build it into a forecast, Richard McLeod and I sit down and we kind of say, let's look at this number as the 5-year running average on it. Other ones are charges for services. Now that's one that you can start looking at indexing any charges that we do. They are a small amount of the revenues, but it would be something to do. And the last category that we put zero growth on is fines. Fines is not one of those things that you have control over. They are the number that they are the number. So you have 1/3 of the budget in here that we just say there's no revenue growth projected over 5 years. We have 6 categories, about 1/5 of it, that have projected growth that we can best tie to inflation. Now, these are things that are a little bit tricky to project, and anybody that thinks they can, I'll take the wager on it. Like the first one is alcohol tax. In other words, you have to project how much people will drink over the next 5 years. That's a little bit hard to do in some ways. Starting to look at other ones, the insurance premium tax tends to grow with inflation. And then smaller other miscellaneous sources of revenue that are a small portion of the budget. We just tied to inflation off this. And what we do is every quarter or every month, I update the number for inflation. We're still hovering around the 3.5 area for the annual. Now, there are 2 categories which we do also show a decrease of revenue over the next years. And they're the motor vehicle true up and investment income. Investment income we put in there because there's a use of savings for operations in the forecast. So that number should go down. And the motor vehicle true up number is a very tricky number. When the state converted from using car tags to using sales tax, there's a true up number that we get to balance things out, and that number just steadily declines. So we'll start looking at that, and it should average out. Whoever's in this chair 20 years from now will not have to deal with it, but it'll probably go away by then.
Jake, there, and tell us about the sales tax on that. Where does it, do we get the sales tax on those vehicles? How does that work?
It should, I think it'll roll into SPLOST, won't it? Or does it? I gotta go look. I think that rolls into, it doesn't roll into our general fund portion of it. I need to look on that one.
I guess I'm just saying the state swapped it around. We as citizens are still paying the same amount of tax. You're getting it in different pots. Where's that money at? It should be.
Let me verify that the way it's doing is that we'll get it translated in on the SPLOST portion of it, but I need to double check that. But you're correct in that what the state did was they said, turn away from doing it as a property, as an ad valorem tax, and do it as a sales tax. Changes also the payment of it much more higher at the inception of the car. They tried to make it whole, and it is a rough ride still. It is a rough ride. And we're all waiting for the last day when a digest of a city has no cars on it, because we've been going, that's been steadily plummeting every year as cars have been sold. Next up, there is one category, and Ray Ezell and I worked on this, and I'm actually very happy with the way he does his internal modeling on this. Hotel motel, because of new construction, which we do say does cannibalize from existing sales. He's got a good model that I kind of have liked working with him on that. And over the next few years, because of occupancy rates and trends, we can see that actually being one of our better robust growth items. And we're having it in here at about an average of about 5% annually. One of the things about it is when COVID happened, the revenue source that was hit the hardest was hotel motel tax. We did not have a month with a zero collection, but we came very close. So that's part of what became the conservative nature. We wanted to make sure that's back. That's back, and it's gangbusters right now. And the last one, property taxes on this one, which is about a little bit over 1/3 of the revenue. What we decided to do into the forecast was put the 5-year running average of 4%. Now that's a little bit lower than what this past year was, and we'll update it as soon as we get the actual digest later this month. Those are the 6 basic categories that we're saying of revenue growth and how they're built into. Okay. Now let's turn to base expenditures, and I want to show you that we've tweaked the model a little bit based off some input from everybody. Is what we had been doing was taking the department's budget and growing the departments at a different rate. So instead what we did was we grew the base expenditures. So basically you start looking at stuff like personnel cost. The office admin services part of this, the donut is is the contracted things that are just like municipal employees, repairs and maintenance. So we've started going through these. And the one thing Dunwoody has is it's a very clean and simple budget for the general fund. It's not a complex, lots of interfund transfers. So when we take this, we broke it down into 6 different categories. The first one at the top is salary and wages, retired benefits, and a little bit of other personal services like overtime. What we did was we indexed this to the last pay raise given. So the 4.25%, we said that's what we're going to index with. Now, when you talk to a lot of people looking at employee wages, they keep thinking at some point inflation will cool down and that will go down, but we don't have much to go on to say, let's decrease it over the next few years. So we do have that growing at a little bit of a rate of 4.25, slower than it has for the past 3 years. But for the first 10 years of Dunwoody, it averaged just about 3%. So it's a little bit higher than the first 10. This is something that could temper down if inflation tempers down. The next one is one of our biggest things that we have to look at annually. It's the amount that the city pays for employee health care. Over the past 2 years, and we decided to do that because of the way the sample size worked, we're indexing that at 12.5% a year. That is assuming no plan changes are needed, nothing drastic happens. That is a very large increase in the budget. There are 5 categories which all fall into things that are generally tied for inflation. They're almost everything we do contractually. Now, in some cases, we'd like to really index a few of those, and we'll talk about those specifically later on. That will be higher than that, but for a proxy, we kept it there. Property and liability insurance, we had to pull that out because that's one of those things. Insurance itself as a category, not just for cities, but for homeowners, for car owners, is one of those things that's starting to escalate faster because of the money supply out there. The contingency in here, one of the things that we built in the forecast, we've kept $100,000 contingency in the budget every year. We actually would like to recommend in future years to start looking at 1% of the budget, or about 300,000. That way, every time there's a new, oh, where do we get it? You have it pre-budgeted. We need to grow with the times on that. So we would recommend at a future date in the next year or two, moving it from 100,000 to 300,000. That way, when things happen during the year, council has a place to go with a balanced budget. And debt, just so you know, when you average our debt payments for what we're doing, it's about a 4% increase annually. So that's what we've got as far as the base budget, the current budget. Okay. Now what we did was we said, and we kind of came up with a different term on this, base expenditure commitments. In the model, what we did, we assumed a lot of the things that are ongoing from one-time sources of fund will stay on here. So there are things that are in the pipeline, and even some that we didn't include, for instance, what we talked about today as far as new positions, little things we just couldn't update as much we'd have to redo the presentation. So we've left it at this. But the pay raise for 2024 starts in May. So there's 5 months for next year. The new police positions, which are doing with ARP funding. One of the things that we do have in here, the repair fund that was done at $600,000 a year, we started with it last year. It has actually been a great thing. We've added a lot of new things, not new things, but repaired a lot of things that we just didn't have the funding for. We hope we in the first year hit 600,000 almost. We hope that will taper down as we start repairing things. What we're doing at the annex, we're doing with that. We're doing a lot of major 6-figure repairs we weren't able to do. However, that fund probably will go dry in 2028. And we would recommend at that point putting in something else to keep it as an operating repair part. Again, this is just a model. It's not a commitment to it. It's just to show a proxy for it. Going back to the bringing positions in-house, this has been one of the things as we get looking at 2026 is the year we'll have to do that. We've gone through different iterations internally of how to handle this in the forecast, because we know when we rebid them, they were rebid right at the beginning of COVID. And we had a lot of contracts with very small escalators in them that were more advantageous to the city than they were to the vendor. We know when they're rebid out, that will no longer be the way people bid on projects like that. So we expect a change in that. Now, this $800,000 figure we say right now is if we took all the current contractors and we put it out for rebid, that might be it. In 2026, and it'll happen in 2025, that may be the year that a lot of these positions might end up being moved in-house because of finances. We reran that last time we rebid all the contracts, and there were some that were borderline, there were some that were definite. We kind of looked over it, but we do have a feeling that the next round of municipal bidding will make it so that the decision to move in-house will be the more common decision. We also have the ambulance and the mental health responder both put into here after the ARP funding runs out. And then we also put in the right-of-way maintenance in 2029 after that contract. It is one of those that we also expect to have another higher escalator the next time we do it in there. Again, the note at the bottom, these are not absolute commitments. The year they occur or not occur are proxies. What our goal here is to show us where the pinch point will be. And that's what we're getting to. Okay, you've seen this before. Expenditures and revenues. You see expenditures and revenues. You see expenses growing faster than revenues. And as you saw in the chart that Richard put at the beginning, we haven't used general fund balance. And this is a very realistic forecast. I can say slightly conservative, but it is very realistic because of the way we've regrouped everything. What would happen is the question is, well, when are we going to run out of money? We're not going to run out of money anytime soon. Different decisions will get made along the process. But the pinch point will be the creation of the 2027 general fund budget. So putting together that budget in the fall of 2026 is probably the first time when we have to make harder decisions than just kind of a yes or no for some little things. Again, this is a pro forma. It's something just to show the expectations. We've got in here a 4.25% salary growth. If that goes down to 3.5 or healthcare doesn't escalate as much, it changes things. If the property tax digest goes up more, it changes things. If it goes down more, it also changes things. So this is something that we'll update continually. But the main thing to show from this is the change in the one-time revenue sources. And that's what brought this to our attention, because we realized that we internally knew those things were happening, but it needed to be more brought to the forefront as soon as we could get to a situation with the books to up the revenue, because that gap was bigger, but now it's down to 800,000. Yeah, is it 734? Can I just round it up to 8? Okay. No, 734,000 gap. And internally we know that because of the way the revenues roll, but we wanted to make sure that was part of the discussion processes in the spring, because we're just basically 3 months away from starting to build the budget for next year. Main task from this, again, operation. The forecast does not at this point show the needs of departments above what's already in there. There are needs that are out there, and we plan to bring those at a further discussion. Revenue. We talked about the freeze and the 1 mil exemption are now set to be the most.
They already are, though. I mean, I'm not being rude, but they already are. I mean, I'm with mayors all over the state all the time. And when we have these discussions of what the legislature was intending to do with property taxes, there was nothing on the table that they could do that was worse than what we already had. And so I think I was the only one in the room. Columbus has some restrictions to that, but I don't think they have they don't have the 1 mil exemption, but they have a really tight freeze as
They've got
well.
the hard freeze. So
Right.
those of all of us that have the hard freeze, when everybody else gets the soft freeze, we're all going to be looking at them like
Right.
we would take the soft freeze in a heartbeat.
Right. But
Uh,
nobody else has the 1 mil exemption as far, I don't think Brookhaven does.
We've got Dorville or Chambly. Dorville decided to
Oh.
vote on it.
Yes, they voted on it, yeah.
Um,
But they don't have the freeze for municipal taxes.
To help also explain another thing on the 1 mil exemption, just to give you your thought, people talk, well, when the house sells, you get the new reset. Well, a house sells for $100,000 more, 1 mil exemption takes off 33,000 of that new 100,000. So you don't even get the full growth because of the 1 mil exemption. Annual big increases, like we said, 4.2 for 5% raises, 12% healthcare, 3.5% inflation. Things grow faster. And then finally, savings can be used for one-time cost or operations at the council discretion that's available in each and every city in the state. And with that, we just wanted to update everybody on where we are and specifically talk about the one-time revenue sources, because we realized that was causing a little bit of confusion between adoption of the budget and mid-year. So with that, any questions or comments?
So I just want to let council know that I have chosen as mayor to change how we do budgeting, like the budget committee. This year, I'd like us to try a work session or two where we discuss the budget as a group. I think it's better than the old system existed for reasons that no longer are relevant. And so we'll work with you all on dates for that. We will invite the public, unlike some of our neighbors. And, sorry, couldn't resist. And just sometimes people make it easy. But I also would like to ask you or Richard and Eric to bring forth to us comparisons with our neighbors. I did my own research recently and I looked at a home in Sandy Springs that is valued very closely to mine. We pay about the same amount in property taxes. However, 3/4 of what I pay goes to the school system, which leaves about $1,500 for the county and the city to share, but that includes the sanitation fee. My friend's house in Sandy Springs that's valued pretty closely to mine, half of hers goes to the school system. So that's a school system issue, which we have no control over. And half, $3,000 a year from her home property goes to the city, double what mine does. And it doesn't include sanitation because theirs is privatized. And so I think there's some dramatic differences out there that we can share eventually.
We informally, and we don't generally cross over to the Sandy Springs
Right,
side all the
but-
time, but I've done that on occasion.
Right.
And it becomes, it's very much an apples and oranges and pineapples and bananas type of comparison, but it's something that needs to be talked about.
The reason I'm not sure I totally agree with that is that many of our residents expect Sandy Springs type services to some extent, not a $300 million performing arts center, but a lot of the other services. So policing, EMS. So, yeah.
And also Sandy Springs is not also a sole property tax city. So
Yeah.
they do get stuff from Lost.
Right, because we have host. It's
And-
also
And
complicated.
then we don't get host, the county.
Right, the
gets
county
host.
gets host, so we have to work on that too. Okay. All right, we look forward to more reports. Is there any questions? Tom?
Yeah, Jay, thank you for the report. Could you go back one slide to that pinch point slide? I just want a clarification on the unassigned fund balance, the blue line,
Mhm.
when it gets down to zero, is that zero above the 6-month reserve or or is that taking it?
Okay, to go through, the blue line is the amount at the end of the year. The super dashed line is the 6-month reserve level. The broader dashed line is the 4-month reserve level. So somewhere in the creation of the 2027 budget, the blue line is below the required 4 months.
Okay,
And then at 2028, no one would ever let this happen. But if you just kept going down.
so we would
2028
go down to nothing.
To nothing.
Okay, that's what I wanted to clarify. I have another question and I'm not at all proposing we do this, but just for a discussion item. We're on a fiscal year, calendar year. I like that. It's easy. I think it's easy for the public to understand. However, you talked about, is there any benefit to aligning it with how revenues come in? Is there a financial benefit? Is there any other operational benefits to doing that?
Having gone through jurisdictions where I've changed fiscal year, it's almost I call it an emotional thing because you end up just shifting the problem 6 months. The benefit, if you ever do a thing where after you get the digest, so if you did something that started in September, you would know your property tax revenue, but you would still have those like other ones that we talked about that we get just once a year. Then if you had to wait till then you're waiting till December and then you're waiting on Georgia Power's check to February. So you'll always find something that will make that hurt. About the only thing that you can do timing wise, we actually do ourselves, and that's adjust when your pay raises are, because then you know a better chance of what your funding is, and you can do that without changing your fiscal year.
Thanks. I have a commentary, base expenditure commitments. You listed some great things that we've added on the ambulance, health responder. Just leave this for consideration for future in a couple of years regarding safe streets and how we manage that role. Could be a hybrid. Eventually down the road, we're going to get enough information that eventually it's going to be presented to council of I'll call it, what we said in the Army, it's called like a course of action brief or decision brief, where you show like, well, how do we here's some options for solving. Is there a time frame? Is it the next 6 months or is it going to be next year? When do you think you'll have that level of granularity to present us that
I think it's the
ABC.
thing that council still needs to have ongoing discussions about, because right now we're in a place where we're in no danger of reducing the services that we are offering. So right now it's on the radar to be addressed. And that's why I said that we wanted to find the pinch point, and the pinch point will probably be the creation of the 2027 budget. So before then, but again, every year we'll get certain pieces of data that will change everything. And our next one will be May 24th.
Right. we
So
get budget.
I thought it was FY 2026 is the pinch point.
No, not
That is
anymore.
the creation of the 2027 budget.
Okay, so we do know though, depending on the course of action we choose, that there may be some steps that may be in place a couple of years before that fiscal year, before that calendar year starts. We may be able to set something one year and set something else the next year. So that clock is
Right, we
actually
have it all,
ticking.
we have our eye on the ball. I will tell you
Right.
that. The thing that I think is gonna be most telling is what the data we get at the end of the May, which is the digest, because if it's
It is the elephant
zero
in-
growth, that is one alarm. If it's 12% growth, it results in, I would assume, some redoing of some projections. And so we just, since we're so close, we wait, but we have internally, we're discussing strategies. There has to be a lot of public dialogue that happens, to be truthful. I wasn't involved in the founding of the city. I don't totally understand what was going through people's minds in those days. But the thing is that if we don't get relief from either the legislature or the EMS Council, which is the Department of Public Health, we're gonna have to have a conversation. We're spending federal grant money to run an extra ambulance, which is showing results, but it's 600,000, 12 hours a day, and the data may show eventually we would like it all day. Sandy Springs, to compare us, and they're double our size and triple our square mileage, but they have like 8 ambulances that they're paying for above and beyond. They're paying extra for. So we have one half-time. And there may be questions about whether we need to take over fire. There are gonna have to be some really hard decisions, particularly when it comes to public safety expenditures. Because we're gonna be able to demonstrate to the public that we can't cut our way to millions and millions and millions of dollars of savings to get the public safety things that we may think are critical, or that the community may think are critical, or the community may tell us, we don't really care if it takes 45 minutes for an ambulance to get here when we're having a stroke. Because what's important to know, since I started talking about it, is that currently DeKalb County spends 0 tax dollars on EMS service. It is totally funded by, well, and funded is loose, right? Because that's part of why it's broken, but it's totally funded by user fees. And half their calls don't result in transportation, which means half their calls don't result in any fees to the company. So it's a mess. I could write a book about it at this point, but I think the community is going to have some really important discussions. We're never going back to the day when police officers in Metro Atlanta started salaries at $39,000 or 40, which is about what I think they were. I could be wrong when I started as mayor, and now they're 60. We're not going backwards. So we're going to have to talk a lot as a community as well. Sorry to interrupt, but there's a lot of community discussion that's going to happen about priorities, particularly as it surrounds public safety. That's it.
I just have.
Oh, go ahead, Joe. That's fine.
Closer. So if I think about things that might need to be in place, the timing of that. So I know there's some things that might have to be in place by December of some year in order to have it done in 2 years, et cetera. So there's these actions, items that we need to look at sooner rather than later, and might even be this December where we have to set some foundation things in place. Just don't know when we get to that course of action brief, decision brief. So thanks. And side comment, secondary related is about the reserve. I fully appreciate staying up to a 6-month reserve, get that. So that's about a 15 million at the current spend. Of course, that I see that dotted line, that reserve increases because our expenditures increase. So the expense makes sense, a higher number there. I see that rated. In the short term, sometime this year, in the near term future, I would support us having a conversation about the leftover 4-month reserve to potentially invest in that capital. Right. So I'd like to have that conversation with our peers. We didn't really discuss it specifically at the retreat, but we do have some capital excess funding that we could do some investments on in the very near term. Thanks.
Oh, good.
Could I just also now switch over to the, like, for the revenue side? So the interesting thing is really there's not, under our current system, there's nothing we can do. We don't really have control over the revenues because we're at the mercy of the market as far as the tax digest. We don't have the ability, like nearly every other city in the state, if we needed to adjust the millage rate. There's not anything we could do to adjust, to make any significant impact on our revenues.
One of the things that Richard and I did as an exercise was try to see how much the council could vote to change. There's not much.
Right. Right.
There's not much that the council could vote to change in revenue sources. Now, there are some where a vote and a subsequent vote and another vote, yes, you could, but there's not a lot where you can just, like if you were a business, raise your prices.
Right. Okay. We look forward to further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that's it. Public comments? Does anybody have a public comment card? Okay, you'll just give your card to Sharon and Jessica right there. And you'll have 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself. It's been a really long time since we've had anybody stay till the end of the meeting. Very exciting.
Night has fallen.
Mhm. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Amanda Hensley, 5246 Waterford Drive. I'm an almost 30-year resident of Dunwoody, and our kids are actually third-generation Dunwoody residents. I am speaking tonight in favor of the city's plans for a Waterford Park playground. I was then and remain today a member of the Waterford Neighborhood Association Board that sold the land for the park to the city in 2019 after our swim tennis club was closed. The park continues to be a welcome addition to our community and is visited daily. Waterford residents, Kingsley residents, taking walks through the wooded areas. It's lovely back there. I enjoy it very much. Members of the greater Dunwoody community come as well. They enjoy the pavilion, and most of all, the tennis and pickleball courts. They are always very busy. The city did enter into a contract with WNA, that's the Waterford Neighborhood Association, when the park was purchased in 2019. And we are so happy to see that come to fruition with the installation of a much anticipated playground. Currently, we have young families in our neighborhood that drive to nearby parks for access to a playground. I ran into one of them just recently. We also have young families from outside our neighborhood that come and visit the park. And I've also spoken with them. These families all look forward to the addition of playground equipment in the park. City parks like Waterford enhance the quality of life in our community. They make our city more attractive to prospective buyers, and they can boost property values in the surrounding area, contributing to a positive economic impact on the community. And just a note about our community, in particular, Waterford, just 83 homes. We're excited. We have 10 babies being born this year. It seems like a little bit of a baby boom. Yeah, wow. We also have a lot of school-age kids, so young families, busy households. They couldn't be here tonight at the meeting. I feel like I'm sort of speaking on their behalf. I hope you'll hear from some of them, maybe you already have via email. We have other residents that have grandkids that visit often. I saw one the other day walking down to the park with their grandkid, but no equipment there for the child to play on. So we know the playground will get lots of use and provide great opportunities for safe and fun outdoor play for so many. And that's just in our neighborhood, not to mention the greater Dunwoody area. So I guess sort of, like I said, on behalf of all those busy young families, and it's May, the end of the school year is approaching. We know that's crazy May. Couldn't be here tonight. Maybe you'll hear from them. Hopefully you will. On their behalf, thank you so much for prioritizing this next phase in Waterford Park. And we hope that you all vote yes for the proposed park playground. And we look forward to a playground by the end of the year. It's very exciting. Thank you.
So just to clarify, in case people don't know, go ahead. Thank you, Amanda. When we put something on the consent agenda, it means we're kind of done. Like we vote on it once, unless something dramatic changes. So just to give you a heads up, a secret parliamentary procedure that's not so secret. Alan Roberts.
Hi, Alan Roberts. I also live in the Waterford neighborhood. Got a 10-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 6-year-old that are incredibly excited that the city council found creative ways to make things happen, even though the bond did not pass. And really just nothing more than thank you and keep up the good work. And supporting the up and coming generations is incredibly important. I look forward to a future where I can walk through the future path system over to Kingsley Elementary with my kids. We already bike over there sometimes with me and my oldest, and love all of the work you guys are doing to make it safer to travel around the city. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ryan Esslinger, come on up.
Hey, good evening, Mayor and Council. Ryan Esslinger, 1416 Womack. I was putting my kids down and tuned in, so I figured I might as well come in and say something, but you're still here. Just a couple things I want to touch on. I know you all contracted, we all as a city contract with the new ambulance service, which one is stationed at the Dunwoody Library in the southeast corner. And it's great. I love having it really close to the house in case something happens. I cut myself open, I can just walk up the hill.
Right.
But they do idle a lot,
Mhm.
and it sits in that back corner where it just happens to be an little echo chamber. And if I'm hearing it, I'm probably the most affected neighbor, but if I'm hearing it, I know several of my neighbors probably are too. I don't know why ambulances run when they're not in service. Presumably, I was told from medical friend, probably because it gets really hot in there, among other things. But I just wanted to bring that to attention. Even like 10 or 15 yards further up towards Chamblee Dunwoody would probably do a wonder of help. From
We
an
can
audible
handle
level.
that.
The other thing I wanted to address is Womack. As you guys know, post capital improvement project at the intersection of Chamblee, Dunwoody, and Womack, there's been some great improvements in there. It's been really nice to see a bunch of folks out there walking their dogs and whatnot. I know my dog has noticed. But I've been in the yard a lot more since the yard has been improved, been cultivating the exterior there and what have you. And not that I haven't noticed it before, but the speeding is just on Womack is just out of control. I do have cameras on my property. I see it records 24/7. I see people passing each other on the double stripes. Some folks treat it as a drag strip. Doesn't matter what hour of the day. I mean, I'm ready to get a radar gun out there personally, just out of curiosity as a data person. So just I know that we've stepped up our efforts, not that we hadn't before with the police and everything like that. We're paying them more and stuff like that. But I think it would be a great service to us citizens, especially those of us with kids, and it's a very high populated area with people walking and things like that. I'm just worried someone's going to get severely injured or killed, including members of my family. So just wanted to put that on the radar for our public servants.
Thank
Thanks.
you. If you'll speak to police chief in the back row, Ryan, that would be very helpful. All right, anybody counts? Whoa, sorry, I closed up my agenda. City manager comments,
No comments. We do not need an executive session.
council comments, John?
Yeah, back in 2009, does anybody remember the name Julia Dennis? Julia Dennis? 2009, Julia won the Scripps Georgia Spelling Bee. She also won it in 2010 and 2011. She's currently a medical student at Duke University studying neurology. Well, it's happened again.
Wait, was she from Dunwoody?
Yes.
Or you left that part out
Yeah,
of
she
your
was from
story?
Dunwoody. Yeah, she was
You
from
left
Dunwoody.
that part out of your story.
Yeah, she was from Dunwoody.
We assumed it, but
Yeah,
then.
yeah, she was from Dunwoody. Well, it's happened again.
Yes.
We have another student who's won the Georgia Scripps Spelling Bee and is going into the nationals.
Mhm,
So his name is Sarv Daravane.
mhm.
He's 10 years old at Austin Elementary, and I am looking forward to cheering for him in the very near future. So again, it's happened again where somebody within our city limits has
No
won
idea.
the Georgia Scripps Spelling Bee and is going to nationals. So I just thought it was
That's
a cool
awesome.
little thing for anybody in the room.
That's awesome. No, I actually emailed the principal of Austin today to connect us, so that's
Yeah,
awesome.
I-
Thank
I-
you.
I'd love that we should connect
We
with
should
this young
connect.
man.
We should send him with pencils that say City of Dunwoody.
So anyway, I just thought that was cool enough
Yes.
to bring to everybody's attention.
Right, Rob.
The citizen comment about the idling ambulance had me thinking, and I believe with our sustainability measures in the city, we have a no idling policy. I don't know how applicable it could be to an ambulance in the summer, but I think it might be worth looking at in general to see how well that is complied with. And in cases where vehicles have to idle, I mean, can we talk to AMR about moving their ambulance to another corner of that lot that's
Oh, yeah.
not so close to houses?
Yeah, Eric will take care of that. I think that a bigger question is 3 months in, have we decided that they can't be at a fire station still? I've never totally understood that. So I realize that there's in theory an ambulance at every fire state. No, there really isn't actually ever. That's not even in theory. Okay. All right. Everyone drive safely. I have seeing no further comments. I need a motion to adjourn. No, moved by John, second by Tom. All in favor, say aye. Adjourned. Thank you all. And for those of you who waited till the end. That's a lectern. Okay. That thing back there. With the cards. Okay, a lectern. Thank you. It looks like a piano music stand to me.